I am super excited about today's episode because, as you guys all know, our tagline is we have stories to tell and solutions to deliver. And my belief is today we are going to deliver some of the most impactful solutions to gym owners, gym managers, and potential gym owners, because there's a lot of coaches out there that listen to this that one day want to own their own gym. And I think when they hear some of the solutions end of today's stuff, stand to benefit significantly, maybe learn from mistakes I made or you guys made, and maybe even learn from the stuff that we got right on purpose or accidentally or whatever. So I'm excited about this episode in particular because of the solution side more than the story side. And the story's great too. Yep. So before we tackle all the solutions, we can just sort of like tell Jennifer's story, right? Welcome to the Stick the Landing podcast, brought to you by Iron Business Solutions. We've got stories to tell and solutions to deliver for your gymnastics business. New listeners, please subscribe to all of our social media channels and don't miss out on any of our valuable content. Hit the like and subscribe button, leave us a comment, which helps us to continue to produce great episodes like these. Today, I have a very special guest. She's a former high-level gymnast herself, a former high-level coach, a former preschool director, and current president of Kids First in Cincinnati, Ohio. Jennifer Evans, welcome to the Stick the Landing podcast.
Well, thank you. That was a fantastic intro. It makes me feel like I'm a little more accomplished than I give myself credit for. I
was going to say, I don't feel like I can make you feel more accomplished than you actually are. Wait till people hear you speak.
Oh, boy.
Thanks for taking time out of your super busy, regimented schedule to come in and do the show with us today. For my audience who may not be as familiar with the brand Kids First, this is the multi-sport, multi-location brainchild of Jeff Metzger, the famous Metzger boot camp guy. Recently retired Jeff Metzger, creator, as I said, of Metzger's Boot Camp. So he's widely considered sort of what I would call the father of gymnastics business. He was the original guy that USA Gymnastics would go to speak on running a great gymnastics business. And you and I have spoken a lot over the last several weeks, and you can probably see
a lot of similarities.
Yes,
absolutely.
Very similar. Because we listened to the ideas, and you and I talked that when I showed up, we might have had 600 kids in the whole program. And you leave with this binder. Well, you did in the old days. Probably now it's all digital.
No, it is. He likes the binder.
Okay, yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
You leave with this binder that's like this thick. And, you know, when I left and he had all that space and all those kids, it was super intimidating and overwhelming. And I went home looking at this binder and said, this is an elephant. And the way to eat an elephant, and this is going to be a recurring theme, people, is one bite at a time. So I just got home, sort of digested the material, and then picked one thing in there that I said, what will require the least amount of effort but return the most amount of bang? And let me start there.
Yep.
Until we got going. And we're still not all the way over to where you guys are, but ETC Gymnastics, the brand, and Iron Business Solutions, the brands under there, are widely regarded in the gymnastics community as very successful business brands. We're just not on the Kids First level. So why don't we talk a little bit about the fact that you are literally president of Kids First and a part owner now in the brand. So talk to us a little bit about sort of what that was like. He anointed you at one point. He sort of said, hey, you are the heir apparent of this program. What was that like? How did that go? What's it like working for a guy who's sort of a legend and says, well, hey, you're my heir apparent?
Right. Well, to back up just a little bit, Jeff, who you see at boot camp and who you see present at Congress, that is who Jeff is to his core. He doesn't know how to be anything different than what he presents.
He's just
himself.
a very authentic,
person. Extremely smart and self-educated. And I was with Kids First for 21 years before I was in the executive function of the organization. I knew early on that um, he and I had had conversations early on, early 2000s, that I wanted something more. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I don't think he did either. And then he took on a partner for about 10 years, and that dissolved in, I think, 2018-ish. And in
Can we say who the partner was?
It was Steve Greeley.
Greeley. That's what I
Yeah.
thought. I thought he and Steve were together for a while, and then I started attending some of Steve's lectures. And by the way, he's fantastic.
He is absolutely
And
fantastic.
he wasn't talking about the Kids First brand anymore. And I was like, wait, for some reason I thought he was partners with Jeff. And obviously I was right. He was. Okay.
Yeah, he was for a decade, and it was a great partnership. Steve's roots are in California, and Cincinnati's a far cry from California. So when he made that decision to move back, Jeff and I had conversations about what that would look like moving forward.
What year was that?
I believe the partnership ended or was discussed to end in 2018.
Okay, and that's when your conversation started.
My conversation with him was in 2019.
Okay.
And so he created a path. We're going to get in, I know, to exit strategies. He's got an entire matrix on his exit strategy, and 2019 was the first step of that. And I moved my office to his office, to share an office with him in the late fall 2019.
Don't give away too much. Don't give away. We're going to get there, all right? But one thing I did want to ask, Jeff preaches on the value of effective delegation and not micromanaging, right? But this man built an empire, one that our industry has never seen the likes of, right?
Absolutely.
And then he says, hey, you're now the president. Has your experience been one where he's been trying to pull some strings or micromanage?
No, absolutely not. He
lives by what he preaches.
If ever any of us were to feel like we were being micromanaged, there's a concern, and he's likely working behind the scenes to find a replacement. He has faith in our ability to do the responsibilities that he's charged us with. And that comes where I know we're going to talk about delegation later on. It just talks about autonomy in your role. He's very big on finding the right people, putting them in the right place, giving them the tools for success, and then letting them figure things out. And the way that he ran his organization up to that point, we are an open book management style leadership. We share everything except individual wages and salaries. And that method of leadership is what prepared me to run the company. Had we not done that, I would have not understand the back end functioning of the company, how to communicate effectively with people that I disagree with, all of those, et ceteras. And the way that he led that company previous to me being in the driver's seat prepared me for those things.
So aside from then the business aspect of what it's like to work for him, what has it been like maybe on some sort of personal level to work for?
Oh, that is a loaded question. I started at Kids First we rebranded from Queen City Gymnastics to Kids First in March of 98. And I started in 1999. I was 25. And I've been there now, you can do the math, for 27 years. And he has been a mentor in leadership, in business. He's been a good friend. He's watched me raise my 3 adult children and been very influential in that process. He watched me go through a marriage and a divorce under that roof. I have great sentimental ties to him. He's a very good friend. He's a great business partner and an incredible leader of the industry. You call him the father of gymnastics. We joke internally that he is the godfather of gymnastics.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah,
that's better. So, you told me in one of our many conversations leading up to this actual episode, a story of Jeff telling you that he was proud of you.
Oh gosh, that was just recently. And for those of you who know Jeff, he has no expectation of us. He has no expectation of the people in his life. He has faith in people to do what they say they're going to do or in the role that he puts you in. I know we're also going to get into what that transition of my presidency looked like in the timeline. But since I've been in that seat, he's not micromanaged me, questioned my decisions. And he came into the gym. We had I think it was a meeting with a liability insurance company last week. And I was renovating the bathrooms upstairs. I personally was not, but I was having them
Right.
renovated.
But you were spending the money.
Spending the dollars on
Yeah.
the improvements. And I walked him to the bathroom, said, let's take a look. And I said, as quickly as those dollars are coming in, I'm shooting them back out. We've got a lot of upkeep to do. And he just put his arm on my shoulder and said, I am just really proud of you. I'm proud of you for reinvesting into this 27-year-old building and keeping it fresh and vibrant for our clients. Those things are really important. And telling me he was proud of me is not something he says. It's just not in his lexicon.
Audience, it's not like Jeff's this like stoic guy
No.
that's unwilling to compliment people or whatever. But and I know this because we've had these conversations.
Mhm.
What he is authentic and deliberate. So
Absolutely.
if you get praise from Jeff, it is sincere.
Yes.
You have earned it.
It would be more like him to say, those are really great decisions, or we would talk about the benefit of those decisions. But in that moment, it was very authentic. It was just that he looked at me as though, wow, this is good move by me, Jeff Metzger, to put this person in this role. So I felt I did. Of course, it did fill my cup a little bit.
Yeah. If Jeff sends me an email after this podcast and says, Ken, I'm really proud of that podcast, man. I'm going to print that out, plaster it on my wall. Thank you for listening to the Stick the Landing podcast, brought to you by Iron Business Solutions. The daily rigors of owning a gymnastics business present unique challenges. Get a gymnastics business mentor, one who's been in the trenches for more than 25 years to walk with you through those challenges. One of our mentors will provide you with strategic business planning, a sounding board for problem solving, general gymnastics business tips, and more. Inquire today about our gold medal business package for a year-long mentorship program with one of our team of experts. Before we tackle all the solutions, we can just sort of like tell Jennifer's story, right? And let's tell a story as you should from the beginning. How, who, why did you get involved in gymnastics in the beginning? Start us at the beginning.
My gymnastics career started when I was 6. Prior to that.
Yeah, because there's a before that. There's a before that. When you were 3, I want to hear this.
My mom thought it was a great idea to put me in dance. And I did the recitals and I got the costumes. And it was great for a minute. And I was the one that liked going a little bit faster. And when you're galloping in your circle, that was my jam. But the process of learning it and that slow, methodical dance class, that was not what I was interested in. It took my mom a minute to figure out what's next for me because we are a smaller. So
3-year-old
3 to about 5 or 6. She pulled me out. My cousin was in gymnastics, and there was a Bring a Friend Day. That's how I came to be at a gymnastics class.
Awesome. Bring a Friend Day. Those are so old fashioned.
Yeah.
I have like 3 points to make. The first is you have a very similar story. Audience, you may recall in season 1, I had Addison Mazzoni on, founder of Chalk Boss. And she started in a dance class. Her mom enrolled her in dance. And the dance teacher, because she too couldn't sit still, everything was literally brought her to her mother and said, hey, I don't think dance is for this kid. She's too hyper. Maybe try gymnastics.
Right.
And so it seems like that happened to you. But as long as we're going to talk about solutions a little bit, people like you and I would nowadays, if we had a coach who was working with hyper 3-year-olds,
does that ever happen?
And couldn't keep their attention.
Yep.
We would never suggest to the parent, try another sport. We would have conversations with the coach and say, what is going on in your curriculum or with the lesson plan or with your energy that you are unable to hold the attention. And this isn't, for my audience, this isn't a like, oh, you're being reprimanded conversation. This is a conversation to equip the coach so that they can have the tools to entertain a 3-year-old because you're 3.
Right.
Right.
And I think that comes with knowledge, child development knowledge, understanding what kids need and what is typical for that age. And being an organization like one of your organizations or our organization, that's at the center of our programming. We have to develop our staff members so they have the tools in their toolkit to do those things.
Yep. You and I talked at breakfast this morning where I said one of the mantras at ETC Gymnastics is look inward first.
Yeah.
So if there's a problem, if 3-year-olds are leaving ETC Gymnastics because they feel like they can't, their moms are like, well, my kid can't sit still and pay attention. I don't go, well, get your kid some Adderall or some Ritalin.
Right.
I go, what are we doing to fail to entertain the 3-year-olds? And for us, obviously we're going to have a conversation with the coach, but really we're going to talk with the leader of the program who writes the curriculum and say, hey, what's going on in this curriculum that 3-year-olds are not engaged and excited about it?
For us, it goes back to that saying, if kids don't learn the way we teach, we have to teach the way they learn. And that's very similar to looking inward. We can't blame a 3-year-old for being 3. And if it's a one-off, that's a one-off. But if there's a pattern, then we've got an internal problem that we need to fix.
And even when it's a one-off, it's worth asking the question,
you're right.
Could we have done something better? And for us, the mantra of look inward first is not just to the setting of the classroom. It literally is company-wide in everything. Like when one of my leaders, department leaders, has a department that's failing, the first thing I'm going to do is not go to the leader and say, why is your department failing? Right. I'm going to say, which tools have I failed to equip them with? Which skills have I failed to empower them with so that they can be effective leaders? I'm going to, the person I have, in reality, the only person I have control over is me. Right. I do have some influence, obviously, but the most influence I have in the building is over me. And so I need to adjust that influence first.
Right.
And then look deeper and see if I can help them. I feel like I had an employee recently suggest, hey, can we do a bring a friend day? And I'm looking around like the parking lot and people are parked in the grass. My employees are parked off site. And I go, where are we going to put these friends? Right. Plus when we had, 250 students in the year 2000, bring a friend day was great. We could get some exposure. But at this point, everybody knows ETC Gymnastics exists. Everybody in Rutherford County knows we exist and know we're here. So it's not like I need more exposure. And I'd love to figure out ways to put more customers in there, but how do I have an effective class like a Tuesday 4:00 girls recreational class? I'll have 3 groups of what we call rising stars, which are ages 5.5, 6, and 7-year-olds, and 2 groups of shooting stars, which are 8 and up. And all of those will have 8 kids in it. So it'll be 24 of these guys and 16 of these guys. So there's 40 group of, where will I put their friends?
Where
the classes are very near full already. How do I accommodate them? So there's a place in which that is effective. Now, obviously it was a blessing to you because it got you started. All right. You're 5 or 6, you're in gymnastics. Take it away.
It was a small Southern Oregon town, and the gym itself was very small. In fact, we had to run across the diagonal of the floor to vault. And
wow.
Foreshadowing later to talk about how I transitioned from that gym to the next phase of my life. The ceilings were so low that when we did start learning cast handstands later, I could hook a foot on the ceiling and pull myself to a handstand.
Nice.
Did not make competitions all that fantastic because I learned firsthand that I did not know how to do a cast handstand. But it was a small gym. If you were in gymnastics, everybody knew everybody. We had about 5 different elementary schools, and so that's kind of where we met each other. 2 of my lifelong friends, I met that first couple months of gymnastics. I was in both of their weddings. We've now been friends for over 45 years.
Wow.
And it was just, it was the 80s. It was a different time and place. We did classes, class 4, class 3, class 2, and I was about 1989. The parent club wanted to expand. It was owned by a coach. I believe he was a former coach for National Academy. I'm not sure of that, but that was what we all thought. And so somewhere around 1989, the parent club, the booster organization, opened a new gym, and it was in an old school gymnasium. And I followed them. We went about 8 months without a coach. And that was really where things started to transition for me.
Okay. And at some point, what year was it that USA Gymnastics transitioned from class to levels? That would have been right around there.
That was 1990.
Okay, yeah. And some of your friends started to sort of fall away a little
Yep.
bit,
Yep.
and you carried on and got a new coach.
Yeah.
And had a different experience.
Yes.
Some of it was good. You got a lot better at gymnastics,
Yep.
and some of it, getting better at gymnastics, came
Comes
at a cost.
It did.
So why don't you talk
Yeah.
to us a little bit about that?
So in the gym before we expanded, I think all of us were undercoached. Yeah, I think we had a lot of talent with a coach that just did the best that he could. And when we expanded, the Booster Club sought after a high-level coach, and he came in at the end of the school year, my junior year, and starting in June of 1990, we trained 9 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday, and on the weekends.
Oh my heavens!
Yeah, we had a break for lunch, about an hour, and we would go on the weekends. We would travel to Eugene or to Portland to use their foam pits because we did not have pits.
So you were training 7 hours a day, 6 days a week?
It was insane. I went from
42 hours. You had more than a full-time job. Oh my!
And maybe we were finished at 4 some days, but on the schedule, it was a 9 to 5 day.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was really intense. I went from basically being, in today's world, a decent level 7 to, I was doing back handspring layout, back handsprings. I taught myself a giant before that coach got there on a men's high bar, first in straps and then by myself. And I went from that to doing blind change Jaeger, overshoot, giant double. Now, it was not beautiful, but I did it.
Sure. No, that's a significant amount of learning to take place especially if you taught yourself the giants. Like,
yeah. I don't know how beautiful they were, but I was going around the bar.
So you got really good under some intensity.
Yeah.
And you gave me a quote about intensity. Do you remember that? Intensity doesn't always mean better gymnastics.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The more intense that a coach is with an athlete does not effectively have positive results. It just creates this level of anxiety where the kid wants to do it and it's just not happening. And you can be as intense. Sometimes you get a good result, but there is a cost to that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Coaches, keep your intensity in check is what I would sum
Well,
up as.
then let's expand on that just a little bit, because you eventually became a high-level coach.
I did.
And you had 1 year of that sort of intense training where your gymnastics improved radically. What sort of lessons did you learn? How did it impact you? How did it affect you? What did it do to shape you as a coach?
So I was 17 and 18 under that coach, and he was a great technician. He was great at basics, and I was excelling so fast in all the things that I wanted to be able to do. I was learning at a very rapid pace. And the competition season started in January of that year, and I had stress fractures in my back and my shins, and I was just emotionally completely empty. I was exhausted. I was just empty, and I didn't finish that competition season. And I always had some regret about that, but I couldn't give what wasn't there.
It seems like 42 hours a week of gymnastics is too much for the human body to endure.
For that length of time, yes. And we did back it up when I went back to school. School got in the way of training.
Sure.
But I could get to the gym by 2 or 2:30, and I trained until 7:30 at night. And it was a lot. But what I learned is there's great value in a certain portion of training. Your basics, your technique, your form, being polished. Those are really important things. But I also learned that there is a threshold of how much certain athletes can handle emotionally, and every athlete is made differently. What I could handle was different than, the athlete that was 5 years younger than me. She was a little more broken than I was. But as I knew that I would coach, I didn't know how much I would coach, but I knew that I would always. My goal was to find what that line in the sand was that were my non-negotiables for athletes, and then understand that each child is different. What you could handle, a little more intensity, maybe the athlete next to you cannot.
And you processed and understood that in your early 20s?
I processed and understood that when I was going through it. I knew it very clearly, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I see many coaches who are young that don't process or understand that. And I can see it because I lived it. I started out my young coaching career very intense and used intensity as the primary tool to get good at gymnastics. And honestly, didn't like it. I loved the coach I was and did not love the man I was. It was like I was leading a double life.
And that is hard to reconcile.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And it caused, for a short period in my career, a pendulum to swing way the other way, as it often does.
Sure.
Instead of just recognizing you're over here and resting in the middle, just swing that thing
Right.
way over there. And I didn't like that either, because I liked the man I was. I didn't like the coach I was. I'm like, I don't like going to meets and having this for results. Like, I used to love
Right.
coaching gymnastics at meets. Now I don't want to go.
Right. And I don't want it to sound like, I mean, I was an intense coach. I had high standards.
Certainly.
I wanted the best out of my athletes.
And I think we're both talking about a different type of intensity.
Yes.
I would say to this day, and I feel very good, I did not abuse anyone.
No.
What was I a good, healthy coach for no, definitely not. And if 50-something-year-old Ken went back in time to a workout with 20-something-year-old Ken, I'd put my hand on my own shoulder and just say, hey, let's have a conversation. You don't need to do this to be good. Because that was another thing. Because I didn't have any experience, right? I assumed that the only way we're going to get good is this. Like, here's a great example. I used to stress and fret so hard when my athletes would want to take off, like even high school kids, like to go to prom. No, if you miss a practice, you're not going to get good. Like,
the end of the world.
Yeah. And here I am at 50-something years old going, oh, you'll be fine. Go to prom.
Go to prom.
Have a good night. Don't come in on Saturday because you're going to be up late.
Right.
I'll see you next week. And literally, your gymnastics will be fine. In fact, it'll probably be better. You got a couple of days of rest. You won't be emotionally resenting gymnastics because I made you miss your prom.
Right.
Right. So, but those are things that I couldn't learn from somebody else. It was like a stubborn trait of my own.
Yeah. And inexperience and immaturity.
But so all that is to circle back to the fact that you were 18 years old and going through this and realizing these things. What an advantage you had, honestly, to start out your gymnastics career already having that inside. It would explain why you were so successful so early. You're listening to the Stick the Landing podcast, brought to you by Iron Business Solutions. Adjusting tuition upward to account for inflation and market tolerance is one of the most difficult and important decisions we as gym owners face. Let Iron Business Solutions take the guesswork out of what you should be charging. We'll perform a full market analysis and deliver a plan to get you into your sweet spot, including a schedule and the wording of emails. Inquire today about our tuition calculator package with a money-back guarantee if your business is already within market tolerance. You did not do collegiate gymnastics.
No, I thought I wanted to. And my coach was trying to make connections for me, talking about San Jose State and Rhode Island. And I thought I would live out the rest of my life in Oregon. And so those weren't of interest to me, and those were favors. I was not ready to do college gymnastics. I was still on my uphill climb. So those were just conversations he was having because he was a good guy. But I thought I would go to Oregon State, get a degree because that's what I was supposed to do. I wasn't ready to do that right out of high school. So I stayed at home and went to a community college for, I think, the first year, maybe the second year. And then I went for a semester to Oregon State.
Well, before we go to college then, because we didn't do gymnastics there, do you have any like memories that you just really hold dear from your gymnastics career? A fun story or a memorable event?
I have a couple of a handful. Like I said, by the time I was a little older, most of my friends had retired from gymnastics.
Sure.
And so I spent the later years of my life being the only one my age at my level doing gymnastics in that town. But I can tell you a story that's kind of funny. The 80s were different for parents also. Your lives didn't revolve around your child's activities. Yeah. And so it was not unheard of to have one parent carpool a handful of kids to a gymnastics meet. Sometimes we made camping trips out of it. We'd go to the Oregon coast. Often our meets were on the coast. And we were going to a meet. I had two of my friends, one of them Buffy. Everybody remembered Buffy because that was
Her
her
name's
name.
Buffy.
Buffy Huff is her maiden name. And I had a lunch packed for after the meet, and I was super excited. We were very frugal growing up. My mom was very frugal, and we didn't have a lot of extra desserts. And she packed me, I think it's called a ding dong,
Yeah.
a chocolate
Hostess,
cake with
yep.
with cream in the middle. And we didn't get those very often. And if we did, my brother would eat them. So anyway, it's in my lunchbox.
Brothers, we rule.
Yeah. So I was also known for falling asleep in the car on any car ride. To this day, I could still do that. Hopefully I'm not driving.
Yeah, that's
when
my
it happens.
daughter.
So we were driving to the meet, and before this was my lunch after the meet. And I wake up and my teammates are kind of laughing and giggling, and I'm thinking,
Wait, somebody ate
what's
your ding dong?
happening? And they ate my ding
Oh
dong.
no.
And I was
so
hurt,
looking forward to
and I
that.
was angry. I don't think we spoke for the rest of the ride, and I'm just kind of burning on the inside. But the great thing about gymnastics and friendship is you get to the meet and it's over with. We're not like boys. We don't fight it out and then we're done with it. But we bond differently. So we get to the meet, and because we're teammates and we're out on the floor, the ding dong issue was out of sight, out of mind. Maybe I was furious on the drive home, but for that next 3 hours or whatever that time span was, we were just teammates doing what teammates do. That's what I love about the sport.
All right, my younger audience, because she said the 80s were different. I just thought of a story. I grew up in Illinois, did gymnastics even for my high school. And in every summer, there's this thing in Illinois. It's called the Prairie State Games.
Okay.
And it's like the Illinois Youth Olympics, if you will. It's AAU, and all the different sports and whatever are there. But you got to qualify for this through these competitions. And me and a couple of my gymnastics buddies get this idea that we're going to qualify to the Prairie State Games. We're out of season. We're not even working out gymnastics, except my buddy has a pommel horse in his garage and a set of parallel bars in his backyard that we took home from the high school to be able to work out on during the summer. And the four of us hopped in a car, no parents, no nothing.
Oh my gosh.
Cash from the jobs that we worked, signed ourselves up for this qualifier, hadn't practiced, whatever. And by this time in my career, I was a specialist. I did floor, vault, and rings. But you could not qualify to the Prairie State Games in anything but the all-around. I hadn't done a parallel bar, high bar, pommel horse routine in probably 3 years.
Oh.
And I was just like, well, we're doing this.
Oh boy.
And I showed up to a meet and I threw together a pommel horse routine. I probably scored like a 4 on pommel horse, and threw together parallel bar. Parallel bars wasn't too bad because it was in Hammy's backyard and we were doing it. Now he had a pommel horse in his garage too, but I'm like, screw that event.
Yeah. Who's practicing pommel?
Right. I think I got like a 2 or something on high bar, but I was good enough on floor and vault. I got good scores. I got close to qualified to the Prairie State Games with a 4 and a 2.
That's funny.
Because maybe it wasn't that hard to qualify or something. I remember scoring being very different back then too. Like we basically used FIG rules for everything. And so there were certain levels you could be where you'd get a 4 and you'd win the event. But if you scored a 4, that meant if you went to the Olympics, that would be your score. It'd be a 4 and whatever. So we had a great time. The best part of that whole story, again, this is how different the 80s were. We're in high school. We take my buddy Derek Havis's dad's Mercury Grand Marquis, and it had a sunroof. And my buddy John Hamilton, we're on the interstate going 55 miles an hour, and this guy does a press to handstand out the moon. No, I'm not kidding. And at no point did I think to myself, boy, my buddy might be splattered all over the highway in the next minute. I'm like, yeah, this is cool, John, go. Insane. Yeah, right?
Yep.
Hopefully his mom doesn't listen to this podcast and keel over of a heart attack after hearing that.
So not only did you go to this competition by yourselves, you paid for it by yourselves. Parents coming to show up and watch.
We
and take
competed
the
in shorts and a t-shirt because we didn't have singlets and stuff because those were the school uniform you had to turn in. So there were people looking at us a little sideways like, who are these idiots? But incidentally, my buddy John Hamilton, who did the press handstand, did qualify to the Prairie State Games and did very well. But yep, this is what
That's what boys do.
Why were
That's
we
a difference
allowed
between.
to be unsupervised? I don't know. In fact, I sometimes wonder why my wife lets me to be unsupervised this day and age.
Aha. Well,
Right. All right.
Yep.
There's our fun stories. The 80s were different. Let's move on from your gymnastics. How did you get into coaching?
Okay, great question. I actually, during my time, all through my gymnastics experience, I helped. I helped with classes. I helped with gymnastics camps as a barter for my tuition. I started doing my own choreography early on, and then I would do some of my teammates'
That's because you were
choreography.
so good at dance.
I was
going
to say it had to be when I was 3 and 4. Those pliés really helped me. But in my first year of community college, Donna Jones, who was a Queen City gymnast, went to Montana State on an athletic scholarship before they discontinued that program. She answered the hiring ad for Umpqua Valley Gymnastics. So the coach that I had, who was so intense, at some point left, and Donna came in. And I remember
was she coaching you?
She took on. No, I had retired.
You were working.
I was finished. I was working.
So she was a coworker.
She was a mentor. She was running the gym.
That's a better way to say that.
And I remember she came in and she was 24 and I was 18. And I just remember thinking, she is so old. It always stuck in my mind. How can she's 24. I just don't even want to be that old one day. I was only 18. I was right behind her.
I'd give my right arm to be 24 right now.
Well, I would not, but.
I'm left-handed. So
A good joke. She was a really great mentor. Prior to life at Kids First, she was probably my greatest influence on my work life as a coach and how I valued myself and how important it was to educate myself.
Let me ask you this. I just thought of this. So the coach that brought all the intensity, that made you the best that you had ever been in gymnastics, and you were coaching at that time, were you influenced by and coaching similar to the way he was? Or when you were coaching, were you already like, nah, that's not fair, I'm not doing that?
That's a great question. I always have had an intensity about me, but I never.
I keep
there's
calling
cruelty.
intensity. Do you feel like that coach maybe had an element of cruelty to his coaching?
I wouldn't want to place that judgment. I don't think he
You're so
intended.
diplomatic.
I don't think he ever intended to be cruel. He would be sarcastic. Sarcasm when you are a very insecure athlete, because most of them tend to be, because they're pleasers and there's just never enough pleasing because you're never good enough. That's at the core of our sport. Not that that's a bad thing. I made it sound really bad. It's not. But when you have an insecure person and you have sarcasm toward that insecurity, it can be cruel, unintentionally cruel.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it was not abusive. It's not the way I would ever choose to coach an athlete.
Sarcasm, when used as a means to manipulate an athlete, is cruel. I think sarcasm in humor, when all parties understand that it's humor, is fine.
Yeah.
But there's a difference.
I agree.
And if we are objective at the end of the night, we know which one we were using.
Right. Oh, right. And a lot of coaches use manipulation and various methods of manipulation because you can get results. You can get quick results.
Yeah.
You don't get lasting results. And the negative impact is far more prevalent than that success of that moment.
All right, so Donna Jean is running the gym. She's an old hag at this point.
And she is old at 24, and she taught me the value of educating myself in the sport. She taught me to learn that. Do you remember the pink book, The Rules and Policies?
Yeah, sure.
She's like, you learn that inside out and backward, because if you ever have a dispute, you want to be able to go to that page. And I tell you, I was not a jerk coach, but I could recite the ones that were important. Was it beneficial to have knowledge of the rules and policies?
Well, I mean, certainly it was beneficial, but
you didn't care.
Yeah. I mean, I cared. I knew the rules and I didn't need to enforce the rules. Like, I didn't need to be that intense at level 4. Okay. There was no point. Like, I didn't need to get on a meet director about cutting timed warm-up short for kids that are doing squat through vaults, which was like a vault. Do you remember that way back when?
That was
like,
death-defying.
How much time do I need to warm that up? Like, for a group of 6-year-olds, like, who cares? What? Pink book right here says.
No, but
I'm filing inquiries at level 4. That's how over the top I was.
I don't think I did.
Yeah.
But she was Donna is, I don't know if you've ever spent time talking with her. She is a very genuine, also very authentic person.
I've spent some time with her mom.
And Pat also has a Queen City Gymnastics history. So the fact that I'm at Queen City Gymnastics or Kids First, again, it's very serendipitous the way the whole thing worked out for me. But Donna came, answered the full-time position role. I coached with her, for her. She mentored me in a way that helped to influence my early coaching days. And then I went off to Oregon State.
Okay. And how long were you at Oregon State?
I was at Oregon State for 1 full semester.
So you presently do not have a college degree.
I do not.
I think right now, as we sit in society, the value of a college education has been diminished greatly and is being over-exaggerated its value or its worth. And I have had many conversations with Jennifer. In fact, I've attended some of her lectures and learned from her. And if she would have told me, I have a master's in accounting and I'm a CPA, or I have an MBA.
Oh boy.
I would have said, oh yeah, I bet you do, professor. And the truth is I don't want to make you feel weird by paying all these compliments, but the truth is she is extremely intelligent and highly capable, and it's without a college degree at one of the most professionally run, arguably the premier gymnastics, although it's not just gymnastics anymore. Sure. It's multi-sport facilities in the country.
Well, those are very kind words. Thank you.
And they're all true. They're all sincere. Like Jeff, I'm not going to say things that just aren't true. My wife says I'm a bad liar, and because my mouth might say something, but my face says something else. So I mean it.
Thank you.
All right. So it's Donna Jean. You guys are working together, but eventually she leaves.
Yes. So I got a call from the gymnastics program in Roseburg was, I don't know if it still is, a booster run. It was a nonprofit booster run organization. And I got a call from, I guess it would be the president of the booster, or I don't know if it's called a booster, but whatever it is. I got the president of the company that called me and said, hey, we just lost our coach and we're looking for somebody to run the gym. And it comes with a full salary and health benefits.
Wow.
And I thought, this is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to do. This was a sign. And I was not a fan of going to school. Why did I need to learn about history of Western civilization and, things that were meaningless to me at the time. So I packed my bags at the end of that semester and did not look back.
When you were in college, what was your major? Did you declare one yet?
Yes, I'm drawing a blank.
What did you think you were going to do with that degree?
I wanted to be a psychologist.
Oh, okay.
I thought I wanted to work with young women. I also thought I would be a writer. I like to write. I thought a lot of different things. There were a lot of things I was interested in. Maybe that's why I was struggling, because I couldn't really pinpoint it.
I never thought I wanted to be either one of those things, writer or psychologist. Definitely knew I was going to need a psychologist. So glad that there's some out there.
There are some good ones out there. So yeah, I went back.
So she provided indirectly an opportunity for you.
Absolutely.
And by the way, that story just keeps coming up.
It does.
So let's keep tracking. Where does Donna go? How does that relate to the rest of your story?
Yeah, so I went back to Roseburg in 93. I think it was 93. And Donna went to Washington State to take on a gymnastics position, coaching position.
Washington State, the university, or Washington?
Washington,
like
the state of Washington,
okay,
to coach in a private club. And oh gosh, maybe the timeline's probably off a little bit, but maybe a year or so later, somewhere around there, just over a year, I guess, she called me and said, hey, there's a club up here in Washington that needs coaches. And I was with my now ex-husband, and he was coaching in the gym with me. And I said, I don't think I can leave these kids. I love these kids. And she just very clearly said, Jen, there are kids everywhere you go, and you will be attached to all of them, every place you go. And if you their life with you is short term, and if you take their short term needs in place of your long term growth, you're going to stay in Roseburg your entire life without seeing what else you could do. And I thought, well, okay, I'm leaving. And
Well,
it's-
now I've got to make another comment because this happens to gym owners or team coaches who want to retire or move on to something different. They always say, "Well, I got this kid in my group, and when she's gone, then that's
right.
it." But the next kid always moves into that
Always somebody
group.
coming up.
Somebody that I had on the podcast, the state chair for Tennessee, Larry Corrigan. He and I were having this conversation the other day because he's been trying to retire for a bunch of years, and he's got this really like cool kid that he really likes in a group that he's coaching, and he's like, "Yeah, and I'm going to be done." I was like, "You're not going to be done because somebody else is going to join that group and you're going to get attached."
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
There's always another kid is the point. And it's not like I'm not diminishing the value of our
No.
relationships with these children.
No,
But
and I don't think she was either.
yeah.
But the other part of that reality, the painful truth is they can retire overnight.
Anytime.
They can leave the sport,
they
go to
do.
a different gym.
Yep.
It's important to look a little bit broader, was her point. And so I followed her to Washington.
And so you were coaching. Oh, you weren't at the same
We were at the
gym.
same gym. I didn't know that. I thought we were going to be coaching at the same gym, but we were not.
Wait, what in the world? So she's
got
like, "Hey,
me-
there's this club in Washington that really did you at least get a big pay raise or something by taking the new job?"
I don't know. Maybe. I think I went from my salaried position to an hourly position at the gym in Washington. And it was Eastern Washington. And I think I was only there for 9 months.
Okay.
And
All right.
it was well run, great athletes. Again, I was very attached to the athletes, but I was terribly unhappy.
Okay. And you went from there.
Well, Donna, as soon as I moved to to Washington, she moved to Ohio, like within weeks. She knew she was going to when I was moving to Washington, but I hadn't disclosed that, not for any nefarious reason.
Sure.
It just wasn't on her radar to tell me because we weren't going to be coaching near each other. So she moved to Ohio, and I was in Washington for 9 months. And around that 8-month period, she called me and said, "Hey, I'm at this great gym, and we've got a whole slew of young kids who've moved up. They've progressed really fast, and we need some coaches."
And did you ask, okay, one, am I going to be coaching at that gym actually with you?
I did.
And two, are you leaving 3 weeks later?
Well, I didn't ask if she was leaving, but perhaps I should have.
Okay,
So
because
I did move to Ohio. In fact, I shared with my mom, I'm now moving from Washington to Ohio, and we pulled out the U.S. map to see where in the United States that was. Because
Ohio was.
Uh-huh. She kept telling people I lived on the East Coast, so I had to clarify, nope, there's no waterway.
Yeah,
on
the ocean definitely does not reach
no, it does not.
Pennsylvania.
So we moved out. I moved out to the Gymnastics Training Center of Ohio in Franklin, Ohio, with Donna and, again, my now ex-husband. And we coached for about a year together. And Donna left to go to, I think it was Namibia. It was a South African, to shoot some kind of South African relationship that USAG had connected her with.
Okay.
And I said, Donna,
I'm not following you this time.
I am all finished. I'm going to stay in Ohio for a period of time.
All right. So you're coaching at this point. You're coaching some high level gymnastics.
So yes, these were kids that were progressing very quickly. I think she had elite aspirations for a handful of these kids, but by the time she left, the elite plan was not something I felt called to do. It was always in the back of my mind, like, would I want to? But I don't think I really did. It was right down the road at Cincinnati Gymnastics. They had something in place that was obviously working well for them.
Yeah, because this would have been right around that 90.
Yeah, I moved to Ohio 96.
Yeah, okay, 96.
So that was J.C. Phelps,
yeah,
Amanda Borden.
and even in 92, Mary Lee was
Yes.
really breaking onto the elite scene. Really.
Yeah, and they already had gone through that learning process, and they had something really great in place. But these kids that Donna had developed from maybe level 4 and level 5 were just moving at a quick pace. Good, strong level 8s with level 9 and 10 basics, and you could see what was coming. And so when she left, I was then running that program for the remainder of my time there. And
you guys were very successful.
Mm-hmm.
And one day in Ohio, you take an off ramp.
Yeah. So
Tell the story.
On Tuesday mornings, I would drive down to Cincinnati Gymnastics and watch their elites practice. And I say Tuesday mornings like it was a regular thing. It feels like it was, but maybe it wasn't. And one day their elites weren't practicing, so I went down I-75, and instead of going west, we turned around and we went east, and we went over to see this great palace that was being built by Jeff Metzger. That would have been sometime in maybe February or March of 96. No, 98. Sorry, 98. And oh my gosh, it was enormous. At the time we opened, Kids First opened with 86,000 square feet. So you can imagine walking in and going
Oh, is
up,
that all?
yeah, going up the stairs and seeing from the mezzanine to indoor soccer fields and tens of thousands of square feet of gymnastic space. And it was beautiful. And one of the coaches that I had learned that I gotten to know over the course of my time in Region 5, who worked at Queen City, made the introduction to Jeff and said, I was Jennifer Smith at the time. And we just kind of chatted. Jeff is a chatter. He likes to talk. And he gave me a tour. We probably talked for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and got in the car, drove home, and by the time I got to my apartment, I had a voicemail on my answering machine answering machine asked if I would like to sit down for a formal interview.
Yeah,
and
you must have made an impression.
I think he knew that he wanted a change. What he had going on wasn't working, and
in his team program,
and somebody told him some great things about me, and then I guess our conversation backed that up.
So you went there like accidentally, like fate, right? Because you were supposed to be at Mary Lee's gym, and they had the day off. So you're like, well, I'll go check out this great facility.
I call it happenstance. It was just happenstance. I stumbled into him.
And made enough of an impression. So you didn't even, at first you were like, I'm not going to have an interview. But then you're like, what's an interview going to hurt?
What's an interview going to hurt? I was happy and comfortable at the Gymnastics Training Center of Ohio. It was a well-run gym with very family-friendly. To this day, they're family-owned, I believe. They've passed it on to a family that I coached some of those kids in that family. It was just a small gym feel, and I felt very comfortable there. Our kids were doing well, and I was happy. And I just remember saying out loud, I'm happy where I'm at. I'm not looking for anything else. And I just couldn't shake it because, growth sometimes means you got to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I started with that first uncomfortable step of having an interview.
Wow. All right. So you had the interview, and you are offered the position of head coach?
Yes. I don't remember what we called it at the time. Today it would be a department leader.
Okay, but it's effectively you're in charge of the girls' team.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. You have a couple of years in that role. We're not going to talk about the next role yet.
Okay.
Because what I want to do is I want to ask, what sort of give us some snippets of what your coaching philosophy was. What did you believe in as a coach? What was important to you like that?
Right. My philosophy as a coach probably began before I was at Queen City Gymnastics.
Certainly.
But it was very much, what can this sport do for these athletes versus right.
Yeah, you said that right.
What can the sport do for the athletes versus what can the athletes do for our team?
Yep.
And that extends to our class program. What can they do for our department? On the front of our building every day, I walk into that building and it says Kids First. And that is exactly how we function. What can we do to make these kids better than the way they were when they walked in?
Yeah. And again, audience, I'm speaking firsthand. I'm not saying you don't be this way. I'm saying, hey, I tried this way. Don't be this way. What can the sport do for these kids versus what can these kids do for our team?
Right.
And at 53 years old, it's embarrassing to admit,
right?
Hey, there was a point in my career when I thought heavily about what the kids could do for the team. Now, I will say this in my own defense. I always genuinely and authentically cared about the kids as human beings and wanted the best for them. But I also wanted Ken Harris to look good. And I thought the way Ken Harris was going to look good is if the teams did well. Good on you that was your sort of philosophy there. So you go for an interview, you get offered the head coaching job. That was 1998, right?
That was, yes.
Okay. So then you stayed in that role for how long?
I was in that role until the transition happened in 2007.
Okay. And the speaking of the transition, this is the Stick the Landing podcast, brought to you by Iron Business Solutions. Get your gymnastics business to line up with your ultimate vision for your business. Hire one of our experts for an on-site consultation and achieve a better work-life balance. Earn a better income for you and your staff. Get strategic planning for class logistics, hiring, training, and more. Get a financial plan and an exit strategy. All of this with 10 months of support in our custom solutions package. Inquire today on our website or send us a DM on social media. This is crazy. You had very good athletes over there. Like, you guys had a lot of success in the JO program at even the highest levels.
Yes.
Yep. You were a top-notch coach.
We were.
Okay.
Yes.
And in 2007...
I misspoke. 2006.
2006, you start to have this idea.
Mm-hmm.
And that idea was?
Well, I had 3 children. And again, my ex-husband and I both coached. So we were gone evenings and weekends and traveled a lot, as all coaches in this industry do. And that at some point in time, when I sent my kid off to school, my son off to school, and I picked him up and then took him to a babysitter's house, it really occurred to me that, okay, this has to change. I can't do this with my family. I can't give to other people's children what I'm not giving to my own children.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a hard decision for me in my mind. I was a coach. I think I had said to you that I told people out loud, I told my mom, I did not move across the country to teach preschool gymnastics. But in the back of my head, I think I knew that there was a path for me. I just wasn't ready to accept what that was.
Yeah, and at the time, you didn't know it was preschool gymnastics. You went into Jeff's office and said...
In 2006,
yeah,
I need a change. I think what is there for me here? What can I do if I'm no longer the department leader of the team program? And again, it was made to be. The stars aligned.
You were walking a path that you were meant to walk.
I didn't know it. And at the time, he just looked at me and said, our department leader for preschool gymnastics, name was Julie, and he said, Julie is stepping down. Would you be interested in running Tumblebees? And I said, I think I have to. I think that's what I'm supposed to do. And to back up just a little bit, I moved to Region 5 to learn about gymnastics, to go back to Region 2 and open a gym. So now here I am.
So you wanted to open a gym in Oregon.
I did. In my hometown, that's what I wanted. And it was like I was fighting this destiny that was mine because I had this image of what I was supposed to be doing. But here I was, ready to make a change. And when you have children, as you know, sometimes your life circumstances change your priorities. And I came to grips with the idea that coaching, I always told myself I could go back and coach. So, who knows, maybe next year when I'm 53, I'll go back and start coaching.
So my wife retired from coaching, I want to say 2013. And prior to that, I have always had an exit strategy for myself. And like, I had incremental goals to be this level of retired at 40, this level of retired at 45, and so on and so on. And my wife was adamant. She said, have you ever seen that old lady at gymnastics meets whose glasses are this thick and she's a little hunched over and she's still coaching? That's going to be me. I'm never going to stop doing this. And in 2013, my daughter was done with gymnastics and was playing volleyball. And by the way, I always was like, hey, why don't you not coach at all? Why don't you be stay-at-home mom, do these kind of things? But she didn't, like, her mindset was, nah, I'm coaching till the day I die. Well, 2013, we had to pay somebody, like some 17-year-old, to go to a parent meeting, a mandatory parent meeting for volleyball and take notes for us.
Yeah.
And I remember getting the notes from this kid, or my wife getting these notes, and both of us kind of looking at it and saying, does this even make sense?
Yeah.
And my wife said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to retire for 6 months just for this volleyball season. And then I'm coming back.
That's
I'm like,
right.
you come back whenever you want. And what was really cool is 3 weeks into her sort of coaching retirement, she said, I thought I was born to coach gymnastics, but I was born to be our kid's mom. I'm never coming back. And it was great. It was great for her. It was great for the kids.
Yep.
Our kids who weren't being neglected or anything. She was still being our
Sure.
kids' mom and whatever. But you know that the sacrifices that are required to coach
Sure.
team, especially if your kids are doing another sport.
Right.
So that was her journey. The sort of like I've got to make this decision, and the mindset shift for her was easy because the plug was just pulled.
Yeah.
Right. You, on the other hand, we're still going to be in the same gym, looking at those same kids that you were coaching last week. And there's coaching preschool gymnastics is a ton different than coaching level 10s.
It sure is.
Yeah.
It sure is.
So talk to us about, like, was the mindset shift very difficult? Was it easy? Did you make some mistakes in there? Was it made easier by the fact that you already had small children, so you knew some things?
Yes, to that for sure. I think I was in a different place mentally because I had kids and I knew what the end goal was. It was to be able to be a mom and have this career path. So what
I meant by that was there are things, at least as a man, that you think you understand about kids when you're coaching them that you don't understand until you have kids.
That's correct. I always say I was a better parent before I had children.
Yeah, same.
And coach, actually, because you suddenly understand that emotional connection that a parent has to their child. Yeah. And so it used to offend me when parents would say, "You'll understand when you have children."
Oh my gosh.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, I know more about kids than you'll ever know." And then I had one, and I thought, I didn't know there was a part of me that was capable of loving another human so much. So when I took on that role for Tumblebees, yes, I understood the love, empathy, and compassion that requires. I had no idea how to build a mountain or what a birdie on a perch was or why we didn't do lunge-to-lunge cartwheels with 3-year-olds. And I had been teaching in Tumblebees, but I was very much in the walking to 24-month class. I didn't have an interest in teaching preschool. So suddenly—
You didn't move across the country.
I did not move across
the
country to do this. So when I found myself in that role, I often do, I just dug into what is it that I don't know and how do I learn it and who's doing it right and how do I make what we're doing better. And Jeff's advice, I think I shared with you this morning, was don't go in and change anything. I think there was a little fear that I was going to go in and rock the boat to make it lean more towards skill-based gymnastics. He said, don't go in and change anything. Learn as much as you can.
There's wisdom in that anyway, that at 53 years old, I can totally appreciate. Yeah. If I was to go in and, I don't know, well, and there's just wisdom in and looking around and seeing first what works and what's the culture and whatever. What was there any sort of like difficulty managing your ego?
Only with the 3-year-olds. They did not care who I was. They didn't know. They didn't care what my past accomplishments were.
But I meant with you. Did you have any problems going, oh my gosh, now I'm diminished? And
absolutely not. Okay. No, because at
you.
Kids First is the house that Tumblebees built. So the fact that he believed enough in me to put me in this incredibly important role, I was humbled by that.
I do say to all the gym owners that will listen that the most important director you will have or leader you will have is your preschool department leader, because it's the foundation of the rest of the program. Right. If we know at ETC Gymnastics, there is a significant percentage that we will keep your 2-year-old girl, that we'll keep her till she's 13. Mm-hmm. And likely that 13-year-old is going to come back 2 years later and participate in our coaches in training program. And then when she graduates take a job for us. And that all starts, although our preschool program is not our biggest program at ETC Gymnastics, it's our girls recreational program because there are so many more available options in that. It's still our capstone, if you will. So speaking of that, how long did you spend as the leader of the department?
For Tumblebees, I was in there for 13 years.
13 years. And what my audience needs to know, like, ETC Gymnastics is widely regarded as one of, it's at least in the top tier of successful gymnastics businesses in the country. Mm-hmm. And between our 2 locations, we have just under 1,000 preschool kids. How many kids are in Kids First 1 preschool program?
Currently, we're pushing 1,500.
1,500, 50% larger. So most important program, foundational program
Yes.
there. And there may be a bigger preschool program in the if there is. I haven't heard of it,
Yeah.
but I haven't heard of everybody's programs or whatever. Oh my goodness,
In a peak,
1,500.
yeah, and in a peak year of that 4-year Olympic cycle, it's not unheard of to push over 1,600 students.
Goodness
And we do
gracious.
infants through kindergarten in that program.
I think I saw not that many years ago that the average size of a gymnastics club in the United States is right around 500 kids.
Yeah.
And so your preschool program is 3 average gymnastics clubs in the United States. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So you're in that role for 12, 13
13
years.
years.
Okay. And at some point, you and Jeff says, I have an exit strategy, an exit matrix.
An exit matrix, yep.
And I think maybe you could be a part of this matrix. And here's what I'd like. How did that go? What was the next step?
I mentioned that he was partners with Steve Greeley, and that relationship ended, I think, in 2018. And so in 2019, Jeff came to both me and our other business partner, Megan Smith, and talked about his plan, his strategy. And he really had about an 18-month transition plan for him to be retired. And I moved my office. He wanted me to be the vice president of operations. And if you recall at boot camp, we don't do a lot of job descriptions.
Yeah.
We have responsibilities that everybody shares, similar responsibilities. So I found myself thinking, I have no idea what this means. And he didn't give me a list of bullet points of what it means. He just said, get in and learn about every department before you make any changes, learn about what's going on and how things are operating differently than what maybe Tumblebee's was. And so I physically moved my office into his office in late 2019 or early 2020. And I'm sure you can tell where I'm going with this.
Yep.
So now Megan moved from her camp leadership role to the marketing role that Steve used to have. I'm now in as the vice president of operations, and you just start hearing this little bit of buzzing. Jeff was also consumed at that time with an additional building we were putting on the property that houses our basketball, volleyball, and now pickleball. And so he was very consumed with that and had kind of stepped away a bit from the daily operations. Fast forward to March of 2020. We had a group emergency meeting on Thursday, the 12th of March, and everybody was happily meeting about what might happen in our governor's upcoming process. We didn't know what was going to happen. We walked out of the meeting. Schools were closed, announced closed the next day. And that was Jeff's last day really on the property as having to do with any of the operations. He immediately took the position of, I'm going to work on all the back-end financial obligations that the company has. I'm going to help the industry on how to move forward during this shutdown of our country, and just tasked both Megan and I at the time to figure out how to move forward during this next 11 weeks, 12 weeks, somewhere in there.
So you went from, hey, you're going to be vice president of operations to essentially you're going to be president and a partner.
Yeah. I became a partner in late 2019. He had, again, that matrix. He gifted some ownership in December 31st of 2019, and again, January 1st of 2020, and then paved the way for me to buy in more ownership after that. And that 18-month transition plan, he woke up early June and decided to write a letter of resignation and officially resigned. And I became the president of the company in June of 2020, officially the president of the company.
Wow. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
By the way, and well-deserved. He couldn't have picked a better one.
Well, thank you.
You mentioned, and we didn't talk about this, so surprise.
Oh, boy.
You mentioned that you don't have job descriptions at Kids First. I want to talk to my audience about how ETC does that, because we also don't have job descriptions. We have what we call a bus plan.
Yes.
And my employees joke that if I get run over by a bus, this is the plan. But the plan is your department is like a bus and you're the driver. And we need to know what the destination is, what the maintenance schedule is, all these things. So they are instrumental. In fact, we update a bus plan every year.
Right.
And they write it. And our format for our bus plan looks like this. Page 1 is paragraph, no more than 2, of what in general your job description is. Not duties, but
Right.
I am the leader of this department. These are the types of kids I'm
Right.
responsible for. Page 2 is these are my daily responsibilities. These are the things that I have to do on a daily basis.
Right.
Page 3 is these are the things I do weekly. These are the things I do monthly, page 4. And page 5 is what we call the as they arise page.
Sure.
Because, we'll have an event once a year or a thing or whatever. And so just fill in those things. And what's great is at our company, our org chart has like an executive level. And then we have managers, directors, coordinators, and staff. And so when a department has a manager who is essentially your leader, when that department grows to a size where you need some help, so you need a director, we promote a director to you, and you and your director sit down and you look at your bus plan and you go, I'm going to take these items off of my bus plan and they're now on yours.
Okay.
And you do that as a collaborative effort based on what this person is good at, maybe even some of the stuff that you don't love in your job, but you think they would be good at. And likewise, when that department grows to a level where you need a coordinator, the coordinator reports directly to the director, and the director opens up their bus plan and goes, hey, here's some responsibilities I'm going to move over to yours. And they work together. And there are many departments where there are 2 directors, and I don't know if we have any departments right now that have 4 coordinators, but certainly multiple coordinators within the department.
It's a great way to utilize your people too, who have greater.
And so this is how you can get by without having a job description. And I thought it was good for my audience to hear, like, here's how you do it.
Right. That's smart.
And that was born out, I'm sorry, I cut you off,
No,
but that was
okay.
born out of, and I meant to say this at the beginning, out of this philosophy at ETC, we do not hire a position. We hire a person and create a position because square pegs don't fit in round holes.
Right.
So I'm not going to cut the hole until I figure out what shape you are as a peg.
Right.
So
interesting.
all right.
We also have bus plans. I think that may.
So maybe that language came from us. And do they?
Perhaps.
No, I meant the other way.
Yeah.
Our language came from you.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's I love to hear people using the same.
But
terminology.
do your staff joke about it the way our staff do?
Well,
because our staff, the intention is, again, your department is a vehicle, a bus, and we need to know what these things are. And they all joke, it's my plan if I get run over by a bus.
That's how it originated. And it might have been Steve Greeley that forwarded that at one of our financial meetings, saying, a bus plan, if you were to get hit by a bus. But our hospitality department has changed it. She's a very sweet, very most positive person that you could encounter. And she said she calls it her I won the lottery plan. So if she were to win the lottery and the next day she's not there, here's everything that you need to know.
Okay, so if I had to guess, I'd guess we stole bus plan from one of the boot camps either I attended or my chief of operations attended. But we went with the analogy, not you got run over by a bus, but that your department is a vehicle and it has a maintenance schedule, a destination, all these things. Let's put this in there. And they on their own said, well, if I get hit by a bus, here's my plan. All right. So the role was initially vice president. It was 18 months, and then maybe you were going to transition into president or something or whatever. And instead it became weeks because of COVID.
Right.
What happened? What did training look like for that?
Well, I can tell you it was the 21 years previous to that.
Okay.
The training was,
it makes sense.
I think I mentioned, Jeff was very influenced by the book, The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack. And he talks very in depth about the concept of open book management. And that is sharing the numbers. If people don't understand how something operates when it comes to the numbers of your business, then they make up their own truth. And so we share those numbers. He shared very openly from the time I started until the time he transitioned out. Not just the numbers, but the why behind the decisions and the ability to think. I think I mentioned the wheel of exceptions method of making an exception to a procedure that we have. So I think the way that he was always accessible, the way that he led me in the organization prepared me for that transition. There was no training training like, here you go, and now every day do these things. It was, I'm going to go figure out how we can conserve cash. I'm going to figure out how we can help the industry. I'm going to work on my personal finances to save the business if it comes to that. Call me daily, and we can just touch. He would call me and just say, "Are you okay?" I know you kept your staff during COVID.
Yeah.
That Tuesday, I laid off 200 people, and that was my first act in that role. And it was, some of them were full time. Good friends, and it was hard. And he would just call me daily and say, "How are you?"
So did you have to make 200 phone calls?
No, those were the full-time phone calls.
Okay.
I called the full-timers. Everyone else was expecting. A lot of them were
I'm
16,
sure people
17-year-olds.
weren't surprised, even
Right.
the full-timers, like,
Yeah,
we
right.
understand.
And we kept on our entire leadership team because we wanted to be ready whenever we got the green light. But so Jeff has always been open and accessible and not a micromanager, which means you learn through your experience, and you learn by creating. And sometimes you create things that work, and sometimes you create things that don't work. He can help guide you in the cleanup process, but he's not going to clean it up for you. Those were the things that I learned that helped me.
Awesome. Give my audience like some insight into who Jeff Metzger is as a person. Like, give us like a couple of good stories. One funny one about him, and maybe one heartfelt.
Okay.
I know you think a lot of him.
I do. I hope that comes through.
Yeah, it definitely does.
He's an extremely self-educated individual. He's also not a college graduate, and he likes to share that. He hated the academic world. But I started in May of 98, and in 99, I was expecting my first child, actually in December of 99. And I had a medical issue that happened in October, so several months before my due date, and it landed me in the hospital for almost a week. And, so I've been employed there for a year and a half, maybe. And I was overwhelmed with the guilt of not being at work. I was told I would be on bed rest for the remainder of my pregnancy. I was overwhelmed with the guilt of not being there. I was overwhelmed with financially.
Because you were still a head coach that time.
I was still a head coach.
Well, whatever the title was.
Yeah. The leader of that department. And Jeff came into the hospital and visited me, and I was expressing just the angst that I was having over all of it. And he just put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't worry about it. Kids first will be fine. The team will be fine. Don't worry about don't worry about not coming to work." And I just thought, he knew that that's what I needed. What was I, 26 at the time?
Yeah.
I'm an overachiever by nature, and I just needed, if I wasn't already.
And the only one who had the authority to say that to you, and I don't mean that like because he was your boss, but the only one who had the authority internally to say that to you and for it to mean something was him.
Yeah.
Because your husband could have said, "Hey, don't worry, the gym will be fine," and you wouldn't hear it.
Right.
And because it was Jeff, and you looked up to him, rightly so, and it was his gym, if you will.
Yep.
And he came in and he gave you that peace of mind. He gave you substantial peace.
It was very meaningful. Yeah. And if I was not bought in to all that Kids First and Jeff Metzger were, I was from that moment on.
Wow. What a great story. All right. Give me a funny one. Come on.
Well, okay. I wish I could.
Pull back the curtain.
I wish I could.
Pull back the curtain. Let us see Jeff.
I'll just give you a little brief insight into him. My daughter, who's now 24, I have twin daughters that are 24. One of them was coaching his granddaughter last year at a meet in Florida. So a big invitational, not inside our region. So they don't necessarily, the parent club running the meet, don't necessarily know who Jeff Metzger is. And Sadie's trying to get the bars tightened, and they were pretty loose, and she's pulling the cable tighteners, and she hears, after Annabelle's ready to salute. She's ready to...
Annabelle is Jeff's granddaughter, and Sadie is your daughter, the coach.
So Annabelle, the level 7, is getting ready to do her bar routine. And Sadie said, "I heard, Sadie. And our parents know, let the coaches coach, let the gymnasts compete. You just cheer and be supportive."
Yeah.
And she's like, "I knew it was Jeff because Jeff's voice." And she said, "I ignored it at first because I was so uncomfortable. And then he kept yelling at me." So she said, "I turned around and there he is. And he's over the barrier. So now he's inside the gym area and he's got his camera ready, but he wants to make sure did you get the cables tightened? Because you know what he was going to do? He's going to walk over and help her tighten those cables. And so she said, I just panicked and I said, "Yep, we're good." And then Annabelle saluted and she got on the bar. But she said, "I was so afraid he was going to come over here and start tightening the cables. And these parents don't know who Jeff Metzger is."
Right.
So
And he's a USA Gymnastics professional member,
That's
so
right.
he has the authority to be on the floor.
Yes.
So there's no problem
but
with
she's
that.
the rule follower at
Certainly.
that
Yeah,
moment, feeling like, okay, Jeff, get on the other side of the wall, Jeff. You're a spectator at this moment, but he doesn't see himself like that. So he is a very unique, one of a kind individual.
All right, let's move into the solutions portion of this conversation.
Oh,
I'm really
boy.
excited about this. Give me your top 5 list of most common obstacles for gymnastics like business owners, because obviously you guys are over there at boot camp and you help
Sure.
people with stuff, so you see this stuff. And I said I'll put together a top 5 list and we'll compare notes.
Okay.
And so I'm going to read just what the lists were, what yours was and was what mine was, and there's some overlap here.
Okay.
And then we'll talk line by line about what the struggle is and how we help, and we'll try to just give them little nuggets so that we're not here till next week talking, because we both could do that. All right. You said the number one most common obstacle facing gym owners was inability to delegate. You said the second most common was, you called it hiring the need. Number 3, you said was knowing the value of their product.
Right.
Number 4, you said was maximizing their space. And number 5, you said was employee compensation. These are all great problems. I see every one of these. So I said in order, I said charging what you're worth.
Okay.
So my number 1 was your number
3.
Yep. I said number 2 was effective delegation. So my number 2 was your number 1. So far, so good. It looks like I'm scoring well on the test. Your number 3 was knowing the value. My number 3 was staffing, because I think it's more than just hiring. And then when you and I had a conversation about what you meant by hiring the need, turns out you think it's more than hiring too. So we're going to get to that. Then I said tracking organizational health. I think there are a few easily found data points that even people who are not data nerds or business people or fake CPAs can look at these things and easily identify, hey, something isn't going well in here. And then my number 5 was, I see way too many gym owners who do not have an exit strategy. So, all right, let's get into it. You said number 1 was the inability to delegate. And you said that there are 3 prongs of the art of delegation.
Wow.
Talk to my audience about these 3 prongs, because this was fascinating. I loved hearing this.
You delegate the responsibility, and then you hold people accountable. And the missing piece that I find quite often is that giving them the authority to make decisions. Oftentimes at boot camp, we have people come in and they are responsible for their staff and they're responsible for the product on the floor, but they have no ability
they have to get permission to do stuff.
To hire the person or to fire the person. If you have somebody that's not working in your department at Kids First, you have the authority to redirect them, give them the tools that they need, back up if you need to. But if it's not working, you have the authority to part ways with them. And that's with any decision, any responsibility.
At Kids First, do people work only in one department? Okay.
No.
So when you say they have the ability to terminate them from Kids First or just from their department?
Great question. We just had an employee terminated from one department, swim department, but continues in the ninja department. And it turns out there was some lack of communication, but he was a no-show more than one time.
Yeah.
He's a stellar employee over at Ninja. So if they do something that is outside our core values, they are not there will be a conversation, and then they will be terminated. So
there's some similar at ETC Gymnastics. Now, we don't have a swim department and a dance department. Everything is within the gymnastics arena. But you could work in what is our preschool department, the Dippers, and be told, hey, you're not in this. We don't think you're a good fit in this department anymore. And still coach tumbling because you're good with 12-year-olds.
Right.
You're just bad with 4-year-olds. And now the hope is, and we're going to talk about this in a bit when we get to hiring, that you didn't hire this person in your department. You should have recognized already they weren't.
Sure.
But so that was a random example. But it can be, they do have the authority to say, hey, I don't want this person on my schedule anymore. But if somebody from another department can say, well, they're doing great over
Right.
here. Let's keep them here. Okay. So you said you delegate a responsibility, you hold them accountable, and you give them authority.
And what happens sometimes in some situations is maybe you have a team coach that wants somebody to take on conditioning.
Mhm.
And so they create this plan for conditioning. And there are affordable and unaffordable mistakes. So at some point, the person responsible for the team program may have to just touch base with them and let me know how it's going. Let's have some checkpoints. But if you're going to delegate that responsibility, but then take over their lesson planning of it, you've not given them the authority
Nope.
to finish the job. And sometimes making mistakes is the best learning experience that they can have.
Yes.
It can't be at the expense of the safety or the performance of athletes to an extent that it harms the
That's a
company.
corporate philosophy at
Right.
ETC. I will allow you to make mistakes. I will counsel you if I anticipate, like if I see this mistake I think is likely to happen here, or this is likely to be a consequence of the decision that you're about to make. But I will not prevent you from
Feeling
making
the pain.
it.
Yeah.
You can still make that mistake, or you can prove me wrong.
Right.
Because I'm not infallible. I make mistakes all the time.
Right.
I make mistakes about anticipating your mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. So as long as like it's not going to be to the overall detriment to the company, and like a $500 mistake to the guy, who cares? Right. We're not going to miss
Right.
that. $20,000 mistake. I'm going to pump the brakes before you
get there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if a child's well-being is,
Absolutely.
then I'm going to prevent that mistake. I want to throw this on you, and we talked about this a little bit at breakfast, because you say they don't give authority. I see frequently when I'm on site doing consultations, people who've been given authority, but not given the third prong of accountability.
Oh, right.
That we call them directionless directors. And here's what I see a lot of times. People open a gym because they're a team coach and they want to have their own gym.
Right.
And they don't want to mess with kinder gym, preschool gymnastics, whatever. And they go, hey, congratulations, you're the director of preschool. Do whatever you want. So they literally have the authority to do whatever they want in the program. But without tangible, measurable yardsticks or definitions of success, all they can do is fail.
Right.
There is no way for them. And sometimes, and we talked about this too, sometimes they get real lucky and they hire somebody who's great at their job, right? But eventually, even that great person will become frustrated because there's no way for them to measure their success against what you value.
Right.
They're guessing. Well, I think they want this many kids in here, but they might not.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. I think that the measurable checkpoints are important for them to know. I think that the greatest example I have for delegation at Kids First is when Jeff moved from Queen City Gymnastics to Kids First, along with that came department leader roles. And today, currently, we have 13 department leader roles. That role is fully delegated. You have the autonomy to make the decisions that you need to make. You have the authority with which to make them. And then you have the accountability to clean them up when you need to. And, or the accountability is also to celebrate something fantastic went well. Yes.
I wanted to say this, and I know this is true of you guys, especially since you just said it. One of the best things about allowing people to make some mistakes is forcing them to fix the mistake. And I don't mean punish them by doing this. I tell this story. This had to be like 2006, so a long time ago. ETC Gymnastics was probably 500 or 600 kids big. And I had a gym manager who was in charge of hiring. And she hired this young lady who, on her very first day, I walked in and saw her, a new person, and I went to shake her hand and say, hey, I'm Ken. Nice to meet you. And I stuck out my hand. And she was looking at her phone, and she looked up and she said, and just kept looking at her phone. Oh. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. And I don't remember what she said her name was. Let's just say her name was Tanya. It wasn't, but she said, it's Tanya. I said, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. She said, I said Tanya. I said, oh, okay. Very nice to meet you, Tanya. And Leslie, who was the gym manager, I said, Leslie, can I see you in my office? And I said, Leslie, you need to go out and terminate Tanya immediately. because if she can't have
Oh,
the manners to shake my hand, be friendly
right,
in a conversation to
right.
me, what is she going to do when a kid acts up in class and she has to talk to a parent? She's
Oh,
like, Ken, I just hired her and this is embarrassing. I'm like, it's a good lesson for you to learn.
yeah,
You,
yeah.
let's get to know some people before we hire
That's
them. So it was a good lesson she then got better at interviewing and whatever. And now we have a whole system, but back then we didn't. I didn't know any
sure.
better. I hadn't gone to boot camp yet.
Ah, well, and it's easy to make a mishire if you're feeling desperate.
But when you let them clean up the mistake, they feel the weight of that mistake
right.
and don't want to make it
Right.
again. And I don't mind even helping people when they make a mistake and need to clean up.
Right.
But they need to be like leading the charge of the cleanup of whatever the mistake is. So
I agree. I think it's also important to recognize when it goes well and to celebrate with them. So I think that's something that we could always be better
yeah,
at.
and us Gen Xers
Ugh,
particular, we're
yeah.
not great at.
No, the
Like,
celebration and the
yeah.
pat on the backs. And
Well, I read
I'm
this
getting better.
book years ago. It's not as relevant now because the different generations think differently.
Mhm.
But this book's supposition was that the three primary motivating factors for employees are money, prestige, and public recognition. So once I read that book, I thought, well, I need to try to create systems at place in my gyms that will make sure people are getting all three of these.
Mhm.
And now we're learning even more about what motivates people and people of different ages and whatever. We're trying to do that, but that's a different topic.
Yeah.
All right. So number one on my list was charging what you're worth.
Okay.
And you and I have had lots of conversations on this, but in essence, what I hear all the time is people just check and see what the guy down the road is
Right.
charging because they're afraid to charge more than him because then everybody will go choose him.
Right.
And like, I don't know who the first guy was who decided to charge whatever he decided. And then everybody just checked, if Gym A charged $50 a month and Gym B opens and they go, well, Gym A is charging $50. I better charge $50. And Gym C goes, well, Gym B is charging $50. I better. Like, what if Gym A was an idiot?
Right. That's
Like,
exactly right.
what if he knows nothing about what he should be charging? Or what if Gym A is in rural Tennessee
Right.
and you're Gym X and you're in LA? You can't charge what Gym A
That's
is
exactly
charging.
right.
There is a scientific means of checking what your market will tolerate. And one of the things I'm really proud of at Iron Business Solutions is we've developed a proprietary formula to literally check that for you. We'll put in all the numbers, do all the research, and we'll give you three numbers. One is called low tolerance, one is high tolerance, and one is the sweet spot. And low tolerance just means if you are charging less than that, the people in your community view you as Dollar General.
Uh-huh.
You're cheap.
Yeah.
You're not inexpensive. You're cheap,
Mm.
right? And if you're charging more than high tolerance, the people in your market will view you as a ripoff.
Mm.
You're not just expensive. You're a ripoff.
Right.
And sweet spot almost never falls in the middle, which is a really cool thing that we later discovered when applying this to many gyms around the country. What we think we've learned, and we're not 100% on this, is that the more blue collar your town is, the closer to low tolerance your sweet spot is. And the more white collar your town is, the closer your sweet spot is to high tolerance. And the sweet spot is where you can maximize your dollars through capturing the most amount of people. Now, you and I recognize you can capture more dollars and fewer people by charging
Sure.
more, right? And so there is that spot in the graph where that line intersects, and that's what we call the sweet spot. So first, we always tell people, hey, this is scientifically acquirable so that you can have confidence to charge this. Next, you have to make sure you're going to give that value and then some to your customers. So if the science says in your market, it will tolerate a tuition of, let's just call it $100 a month, you better provide at least $100 a month worth of value right? You can't have 15-year-old kids creating their own curriculum and wandering around and rotating at their own space. Like let's
That's
have
right.
something that's worth something to the parents. And then we often feel from our clientele that they are afraid to charge what they're worth because they're afraid they're going to lose customers.
Right.
So it is fear that drives their decision making, and none of us makes good decisions when we're afraid.
Right.
And we think the science of like bringing out this formula and showing them this is what your market will tolerate helps them go, well, all right, math says I should charge this. Now, if we go in someplace and they're currently charging $69 a month and their market tolerance is $99 a month, or their sweet spot's $99, I will not tell them, well, charge $99 tomorrow. That's foolish, right? But I like to find an 18 to 36 month window in which you will get all the way caught up to your sweet spot. And by the way, every year your sweet spot's going to move.
It has to.
Yeah, because things cost more.
It does.
So what are some philosophies you guys take? Because you said knowing what the value of your product is.
Right. I think for those of us in the position of making tuition adjustments, it's important for me to be able to recognize that, like you just said, the cost of doing business goes up every year. We typically don't take a tuition increase, like the same terminology that you've used. We do a tuition adjustment.
That's right.
And we do that very in tandem.
You know who I got that from? Ann Josephson.
Yeah.
Do you know her?
I do. She's been to boot camp also.
She's another like absolutely brilliant. I need to just call her and see if she'll come on the show. It's a long way to fly her out from LA. But.
Well, for note, I think Jeff has been talking about tuition adjustment since the beginning of time.
Okay.
And
not increase, adjustment.
Yep.
So she got that from him.
I'm not saying she did or did not.
I got that from her. But the point is, why reinvent the wheel?
Well, that's
if I meet some smart people doing some smart things, I'm just going to go, well, I'm going to start doing that.
I just surround myself with really smart people.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, I cut you off.
No,
so you guys make the tuition adjustments every year.
And we use CPI as our guide. And then, of course,
CPI is the Consumer Price Index.
I'm sorry. Yes, you're right.
Not everybody's as smart as you, Jennifer. Come on now.
Okay. And we also take into consideration the things that are outside of our control that maybe are not included in CPI. And for us, the big
Can I ask a follow-up
Yes.
question about CPI? How can my audience find out what CPI is and what does that mean to them?
I just look it up on my little machine in my hand, and
You
it
just
takes me
Google,
right. I do hit
what's
Google.
the CPI?
And it takes you right to the platform, and it will give you the monthly running as well. I think the next report comes out May 10th. There's a monthly report of CPI.
So you use the Consumer Price Index. I use a cost of living index.
Okay.
But there are places where you can find the cost of living index where it breaks it down better. Because, for example, if you just did a cost of living index in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where my original gym is located, it factors in things like housing, which is becoming much more expensive. And the overall cost of living index might be like a 1.04 or 1.05 right now. So 5% above the national average. But healthcare is like a 0.99, so it's 1% lower. Education is like a 0.97, so it's 3 points below. And then if you keep digging, you can get all the way down to goods and services. And within the services, you can find another number and see where that is. And right now, that number for us is at 1.01. So we're 1% above the national average.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
So why do you guys choose to use CPI? Because maybe I'll change my mind.
Well, for us, I think for us, it's the way that Jeff has established a longevity in our pricing, and parents can recognize it very easily.
Yeah.
But what I also state in the email or the letters that I send out is that is our starting point. There are things that are outside of CPI that we have to consider as a business. And we talked about the cost of labor.
Yes.
And what our start wages are compared to our veteran senior leadership.
Yep.
And we can't brush that under the rug and just stay with CPI, or we're going to be out. We are going to not be able to hit our targets as a company. So we use CPI. We use some of the things that what the national CPI is you you have to also believe the numbers that you see. And I'm a firm believer that you ask and you question, and then you go back and you look at your financials and you look at things like our utilities and our rent and our health benefits and our 401ks, those things. How much more are we putting back into our
Yep.
staffing and our employees that maybe fall outside of CPI? So CPI is a jumping off point, and then we go from there. But over the last 5 years, we have been consistent, and in some cases, not 5 years. We did not take one into 2020, but since then, we've tried to be modest where we could, but we had to be realistic where we had to be.
Same.
And we are a high cost company, a premium product, and we charge a premium
There it
price.
is. There it is. So I will even talk to my clients, and we certainly talk about this at ETC Gymnastics. We are Macy's, not Walmart.
That's right.
And there's nothing wrong with Walmart. I buy stuff at Walmart, right? I'm not going to buy my clothes there because I've reached a point in my life where I can afford Macy's clothes, or actually Lululemon for me.
Oh, boy.
I look a lot better in Lulu's stuff off the shelf than I do in Walmart stuff off the shelf. And again, nothing wrong with that. I buy my groceries at Walmart, a banana from Walmart, a banana from Kroger. I don't care. If it's cheaper at Walmart, I'm going to buy that one. It's just a banana, right?
Right.
But there's even a different customer experience at Macy's than there is at Walmart.
Yes.
And in fact, I don't talk to my customer service people about Macy's versus Walmart. I talk about the difference between Chick-fil-A and McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be known as the Chick-fil-A of gymnastics, not the McDonald's.
Right. Yeah. From the time you walk in the door,
Yep.
the look of the parking lot, the look of the building, the feel and the atmosphere. Are you being greeted when you walk in? Are you being greeted when you leave? Is somebody coming out of the gym and asking you if you need help or know where to put your child's shoes?
Yep.
That constant.
That is part of the value that you're talking about.
Yes.
Charge for it.
Yes. We.
By the way, if you're charging for it and not delivering, you're going to run into some problems.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And when you rely on a young workforce, it is a constant work in progress. You said you're fortunate to be near a college.
Yes.
So you have college age employees. We have over 70% of our employees, 72% of our employees are Gen Z, under the age of 27.
Okay. I find, for me, and this wasn't planned, but this is important, I find that Gen Z employees are easier for me, Ken Harris, to manage and relate to than the millennials. And here's why. What we are learning is that millennials, or what we have learned is millennials were motivated by making a difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Money didn't matter as much, so they managed it poorly. But they wanted to work for ETC Gymnastics when ETC Gymnastics wasn't a corporation that could afford to pay what they could have gotten outside of ETC Gymnastics, because they can make a difference in a kid's life.
Sure. And
that mattered to them. So millennials, I had to provide an environment and something where they could feel good about what they were doing. Those opportunities. What we've learned now about Gen Z is they are motivated by money.
They are.
And in fact, there was a statistic I saw that said that the average, I don't have this in front of me right now, but I feel like the average Gen Z person has something like $7,400 in their savings account. And the average millennial has $1,200.
Wow, that's interesting.
Because
not surprising.
So your Gen Z people look at their job as a vehicle to get them to where they want. I do this job not because I love it, but because it gives me money so I can do the things I want.
Right.
And your millennial looked at their job as, I need to find something that I'm passionate about that brings fulfillment to me.
Fills my cup.
So we could convince college kids when they were millennials to work at ETC Gymnastics instead of the Gap or Taco Bell or whatever, even if we didn't pay as much as the Gap or Taco Bell, because this was a better job. They were fulfilled. Now, when McDonald's puts up a sign in their window that says now paying $15 an hour, I go, crap, we got to pay $15 an hour, because they just assume go fry the fries, even though it's boring and a horrible job and whatever. And this is a good job because all they care about. And again, I'm oversimplifying it, but last year or 2 years ago, maybe in Region 7 Congress, I was giving some lectures and had some time in between. and listened to somebody who was explaining boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so eye-opening. So you say, did you say 70% of your?
72%. And so that's, we hire as young as 15 to 27, with the majority of that 72% being under the age of 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's tough. That's tough to do and
It is.
tough to manage. It presents its own unique
does.
challenges.
It does. And I find really great strengths in both millennials and Gen Z, but there are significant.
Certainly. I'm not saying that I don't like millennials or whatever.
Right.
But because I'm Gen X, I at least understood Gen Z. All right, well, they want more money. Let me solve it this way.
Sure.
I didn't understand all the different ways that millennials thought about the way they thought about money or what they deserved.
Right.
Maybe.
And you're right about wanting to make a difference, but they wanted... I can't really put my finger on it. I remember hiring a lot of millennials in Tumblebees. And then there came a point in time when that somewhere between that, in that generation, a particular end of it, I said to Jeff, the second half of this generation they're on it. And I don't remember what caused me to think that. They showed up, they worked hard, they didn't need... I felt like some of them really needed some coddling, and that was not my strength.
Yeah, mine either. And we talked about that because we're both old school Gen X. Like I always viewed the thank you from my boss as the paycheck.
I did too.
Like I didn't need him to say nice things or tell me good job or whatever. I just was like, oh, I got a paycheck. I'm still employed and must be doing a good job,
Right.
And I am also willing to admit that the rest of the world isn't wired that way. Right. So I need to change me because that's who I can control me more than I can control the rest of the world and try to meet those people where they are. That was some free stuff. Wasn't even going to be in the podcast, people. There you go. All right. Your number 2 was hiring the need.
3, but yes.
Wait, I have your number 2 as hiring the need. Your number 3 was knowing the value of your product.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was on yours. You're right.
Yeah. My number 1 was charging. So we're moving over to your number 2.
You are right with the notes in front of you. So yes, the hiring.
I'm cheating.
The hiring the need. I learned that quickly in Tumblebees. Not to wait until I had a problem or a need to hire. We have 7 different hiring mantras at Kids First, and one of them is always be in recruiting mode. And that means we are always looking at, are our employees mediocre, good, or great? And Jeff has recently added world class because not very many people can hit that world class. But if we have an organization made up of any mediocrity, we've got to either elevate them or move them up or move them out for those potential good and great employees. And if we're consistently taking in those people who apply that look like they're going to be a fantastic fit, but we just don't have a spot for you, then we are going to constantly be chasing our tail, because those moments of being overstaffed, I always say, enjoy them while they last, because something comes up, especially with so many young people on our staff, whether it's vacations or family days, or they need to go travel for a while. They take 14 different vacations during the summer. We're just constantly looking for those next great people that can find their way at Kids First.
So you made me think of this just now. Something that I recommend to some of these smaller clubs that I consult, when they don't have the luxury of, 100 employees at ETC or 270 employees at Kids First, is if you have a role, or let's say you have 30 hours that need to be filled. Don't hire a 30-hour employee. Hire 3 who need 12. Because you'll give each of them 10, which is going to get them really close to that 12. So every time something comes up, oh man, I got a birthday party this weekend that I need somebody for. They go, well, I only have 10 hours. Okay, I'm going to do the birthday party because that pays better than hourly anyway. Let me jump in and do there. And you made me think of that just now when you were talking about the times of being overstaffed, and I don't ever remember being overstaffed. Like we're always just the right amount of staffed, and it's not because we're letting people go, but again, this is one of the luxuries of having 2 clubs with that total well over 3,000 kids in them. you can find things for the staff to do. Hey, you know what?
Sure.
This particular ninja class has these 2 boys that are on the spectrum. So instead of sticking with our 8-to-1 ratio, you jump in and help out with that
Right.
class to make the class experience better.
Right.
Which again, so these 400, 500 kid clubs don't always have the
You're right.
luxury.
Greater volume does allow for a lot of.
Yeah. All right, keep going on your hiring mantras.
I don't think I can rattle all 7 of them off, but we hire and promote from within.
Yep.
Hire the character, train the skill.
Yep.
This was a big one for me. This one, I think this one and always be in recruiting mode came from me. Jeff asked me at a boot camp one time, what do I wish I had known when I was in the department leader role of Tumblebees that I didn't? And I said, one is that I should always be looking for great people. And the other was not going into an interview excited about an applicant, expecting to hire them. Instead, expect to be underwhelmed and then hire those who are obviously really great fits. So I think that would be advice I would give to people as well. And then when you make a poor hire, act swiftly and eliminate that from your staff, or you end up with a staff infection. And those
I love that phrase.
Oh, those are hard to remedy. You lose credibility with your people, whether it's clients or other employees, and it's just not good for anybody.
Okay, so I give a lecture on culture for USA Gymnastics, and one of the things I talk about culture is keeping an employee out of necessity. You believe, I can't fire this person because who's going to coach these classes, does more to destroy your morale than terminating them and asking the good people there to step in and fill the gap while you find the next person.
Right. Yeah. That one of our hiring mantras is we'll go short staffed before we go poorly staffed. And that's a great example of that. And with parents, you can also ask for their support and their patience. Like if it's a team program, we've been understaffed for team where we've had far too many kids in groups. But we let them know we're going to hire right. We're not going to hire fast.
Yeah.
So I would imagine we're very aligned when it comes to how we go about looking for people, when we go about looking for people. And the reality is we are constantly looking for great people.
Yeah. So I'm going to tie this in. My number 2 was effective delegation, and we exhausted that. But my number 3, I said staffing, which it turns out is a lot like what you called hiring.
Right.
And I always feel like I preach that there are 3 components to staffing, and there's obviously a lot more, but in this particular arena that we're talking about, I say there's hiring and training, there is developing and educating, and then there is evaluating. Those are the 3 things that you need to do to have a good staff. Now, obviously there's paying and whatever, but when we talk about hiring and training, we have, we call it the 6-day training method, where we can theoretically take somebody who has never taught gymnastics ever, or even done gymnastics, as long as they have the high character, because we hire character first, and put them through this training process while they're being hired. And in 6 days, and it's really 7, you can have a class on your own. And here's how it works out. The day 1 that doesn't count the 6-day training is a face-to-face interview and a working interview. And audience, this is so important. What I'm about to describe only works if you are absolutely 100% intentional with how you hire and train. A super common thing is we hire a coach and then they shadow a coach for 30 days, which is not, there's no intentionality behind that at all. None. So even in the working interview, during all of our days of training, and even in the working interview, there's a report card that whoever you are training under is going to fill out about you at the end of the day. Right. And we show you the report card before the day starts. So it's an open book test. Hey, today's your working interview. I'm so-and-so. It's great to meet you. Here's what we're looking for from you. We want to see you interact with the kids, and you don't have to spot anybody or teach anybody gymnastics, but you can tell a kid good job and give them a high five. Right. We want to see you introduce yourself to other staff. We want to see you smile and interact with the parents on the other side of the wall, which is a mandatory thing for us when classes are over. Like, go through and say, hi, I'm Joanna and I'm training. Nice to meet you.
Easy enough.
Right? If you can do those things, then you have proven that you are at least worth us training.
Right.
So then every day of training has a different report card. And if we think we're going to likely use you in different departments, we will have you train in, it'll be 2 to 4 hours per day. By the way, training is all paid for us. It'll be 2 to 4 departments per night. And you'll get a report card for each department. And some of the things are very similar. Like, in fact, it might be the same. The first line might be the same on all the departments on day one. And then the second line might be what we want you to be able to do by the end of the day is let's say in dippers, we want you to be able to help a kid up in a bridge. Right?
Yeah.
And if the lesson plan doesn't have bridge, the department leader that day, or it'll be somebody that we call on the org chart. So if it's not the manager of the department, it'll be one of the directors. And if they're not there for you to train, it's one of the coordinators. You can only train with somebody on the org chart. They'll scratch out, help on a bridge. And I said I wanted them to physically help a kid on a cartwheel over a trapezoid or whatever. So that there is still some measurable thing on there. And then there might be a few other things like learn the names of at least 3 kids by the end of class and introduce yourself to 2 new people on there. And then at the bottom of the thing, it'll say any yellow or red flags. If so, explain. And then right below that, it'll say, I want this person to continue to train in my department.
I love that.
Yes or no. And the beauty of that is you can train in dippers today and they check no, but you also trained in ninja and they're like, heck yeah, this guy was great over here. So then we know on day 2, no more training for you in the dippers department. We'll do ninjas and we're going to add tumbling maybe tonight. See how that
So
goes.
you try to find the right spot.
Yep. And so we have very specific objectives that are written that we show you. And if we're going to show you, we want you to learn the names of 3 kids and you can't bother to learn the names of 3 kids, you're probably not ETC material. Right. And if you do, we're like, okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. And so there's always terminology, physical, and personality in each day's worth of training. And because our leaders develop their own curriculum and their lesson plans, and we use Google Classroom. I don't know if you guys use this.
Some.
So at the beginning of the week, let's just keep using dippers. They create a lesson plan. They are responsible, the department leader, for filming the lesson plan. And I say, I want your video to be 2 to 6 minutes long because I don't want somebody to have to spend 20 minutes watching your stupid lesson plan. It's a quick film of what the setup is going to look like in case they're the first class of the day and they have to set the stations up. And some quick explanations of what they're doing at each station and what might be some, like, this is a common error for you to be ready for, or here's a good way to spot this thing. Or we have a philosophy, and I don't have time to get into it, but all of my department leaders' curriculums need to be what we call adaptive and congruent over time. So adaptive, in other words, like if a brand new kid comes, here's something they can do at this station. And if the kid who's been coming for 8 months, here's something they can do at this station. And congruent over time is don't make your theme handstands this week and forward rolls next week and round-offs next week. Let's stick with handstand as a theme for 3 to 5 weeks so that we can progress at handstands and then go on to the next thing. So, and all of that is filmed so that after you've gone through your 6 full days of training and everybody says, I want this, I do want to hire this person, I do want to hire this person, we can put you on the schedule and you can literally, because we use iPads to take roll. So you get there your 30 minutes early, which we pay you for. You click on the Google Classroom, and there's the beauty of the Google Classroom because we assign it as an assignment. And so we know who watched the video and who didn't because you turned in the assignment or you didn't turn in the assignment. So you watch the video of what the lesson plan is, you go set those things up, or you know what's getting ready to happen at all these things. And you're literally equipped, even if you're a non-gymnastics person, to help the kids in that class. But it is all through being deliberate, not shadowing. You can't take somebody that's never done gymnastics and never taught gymnastics and let them shadow for 30 days and go, okay, here's your class next week.
Now go teach. No.
Yeah.
I agree.
So they aren't responsible for creating their own curriculum and they aren't responsible for knowing all the gymnastics. You need to know this gymnastics for this day, and
Right.
then that gymnastics for that day. So that's the hiring and training. The developing and educating is there's an educational component of every one of our staff meetings. We have a staff meeting once a month. And the first part of it, the first 20 minutes, in fact, is education. And this is tied into our staff degree program.
Okay.
So the part of the philosophy of the staff degree program is as one learns much, many learn some.
Mm.
So if I had to watch a video on how to teach Jaegers or something as a part of my staff degree, and they don't watch ETC produced videos. They've got to find these videos. And we've got a library of videos from the old USECA stuff, and then YouTube. There's all kinds of good YouTube channels. There a certain amount of stuff that you had to learn. There's a percentage of that you have to present to the staff. So you had to watch a 20-minute video on the thing. When it's your turn to present, we start a watch. You have 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to present a shell of what you learned. Yeah. One, it reinforces what you learned, so you get better at knowing what you learned because you had to present it to everybody. Right. And two, everybody got something out of that. Yeah. And I don't limit any of my people's learning to gymnastics. So people have done stuff like how do you get through to kids on the spectrum, and not in a gymnastics way, but like how do educators get through to kids on the spectrum? And then they present a little bit of that. I had somebody who had a brother-in-law who was a restaurant manager. And because they were on the org chart, they're like, hey, I want to learn more about just managing a business. Let's see what that's like. And they came in and presented on what that was. So they present that to the staff, and another part of your staff degree when you're getting advanced degrees is you have to give clinics. Oh, wow. And we do them at the end of staff meetings. Hey, I'm giving a clinic on how to spot a full. Anybody who wants to attend. So some people get credit because they attend, because you need to attend clinics to get credit for your degree. And other people are getting credit for giving clinics because you're at the higher thing and you have to give clinics. And so there's constant staff education. And then evaluating is my conveyor belt. And you and I talked about this extensively, where every month, every staff is being assigned a score as an employee and as a coach. And we're evaluating, are they trending upward? Are they trending downward? If they're trending downward, what tools do we need to give them? Right. Or is it time for them to fall off the back of the conveyor belt? Right. So, all right. You said number 3 was knowing the value of your product. We talked about that. Was there anything left?
No. Well, yes, I do think not only is it important for those making tuition adjustments to know the value of the product and what that does for our bottom line moving forward that next 12 months, but I think it's important for all of our employees to understand we are assigning a value to this product, and you are responsible for the parents' perception of the delivery of that value. Yes. So you are the person. And when they start to see themselves as more than just a coach of a class, and now they're the face of the value of that product, I think that helps to elevate as well.
When it comes to recreational, I love that you said the appearance, because when it comes to recreational gymnastics, behind the scenes, we say the appearance of good gymnastics is actually more important than actual good gymnastics. Because if your recreational gymnast comes 1 hour a week,
yes,
how much real good gymnastics is she going to learn? I can teach a 1 hour rec kid a back handspring, and she'll be able to do one on her trampoline. Is it the same back handspring I'm going to teach a team kid that I think one day is going to be a level 10? No, it isn't, because that kid's coming a whole bunch of hours. Right. I can do the extra drills, the extra strength, the extra conditioning. But the mom in the bleachers has to see her kid getting spotted through backflips.
That's right. That's what she wants.
Yes, because that's the appearance of good gymnastics. Right. All right. You said number 4 was maximizing space, and this is so great. I'm going to only say this one thing about it, and then I'm going to let you run with it. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone into people's gyms as a consultant, and one of the first things they say to me is, we can't afford a new building, but we're bursting at the seams. Right. And they have 15,000 square feet and 500 kids. Right. You are not bursting at the seams.
It's relative to what role you play in the gym. So a team coach always needs more space. They always need more beams, more bars, more floor space. And a tumblebee program for us wants the fun stuff, the trampolines, the foam
Yeah.
pits. So being able to share and recognize that when your program expands into space that it wants versus what it needs, you're taking away space that another program may need. And so I'm looking at, we dissolved a tumbling and trampoline program in 2018, and we ran probably about 125 students every week through that. And our whole focus was, what is the best use of that space? How do we maximize the use of that space? And what immediately happened is our girls' team program kind of bled over into it because they wanted to use the rod floor. And that is great use of the space, but that's not the most effective and most profitable use of that space.
Yeah. And by the way, something that team coaches sometimes overlook is you say it's not the most profitable, and they're like, well, profit, blah, blah, blah. The only reason we can afford to pay you is because we're profitable.
Right.
Right. We have a girls' team as a luxury,
right,
not as a necessity.
Right. I mean, when you think about your class, I have no idea your tuition schedule or your what your class kids versus your team kids are. But let's say your 1 hour a week student is paying $30+ an hour, and your 20-hour a week student is paying $7 an hour. You tell me, how much math do we need to do to recognize where that profitability lies? And the rec student is being coached by a young teenager at a starting wage or a mid-wage versus your high-level technician who's being paid a higher salary. So those are the things that in my seat I'm looking at. And I think I shared with you the example this morning. When I first took over Tumblebees, there was a station that had a 30-foot in-ground trampoline into a foam pit and carpet bonded foam on the way back. And so the instructors would stand and try to follow all 6 of these 3-year-olds through this very long station.
Yeah.
And we were busting out during the winter months, as we typically do. And I had kids on wait list. So I took a gate made out of PVC pipe, and I placed it on the trampoline, and I cut the station in half. So immediately I have 6 more spots every class time, 4 busy evenings a week, and a Saturday morning. And the math was simple. I expanded. I can't do the quick math in my head right now, but it was a no-brainer. And all it took was somebody thinking outside of the box. So there is an example of, I had no more square feet. I just was able to double the use of that single space. So, I look all over Kids First. We have certain rooms that were designed. We have a room, it's called our cultural arts room. And in the summer, it's packed with summer campers. It has been a hair salon. It has been a kids' hair salon. It has been a workout space for
Hair salon
grown-ups.
sounds like a place I need to visit.
Yes. Well, it did not work. It no longer is there. So maybe we had the wrong clients in there. I'm not sure.
We tried some stuff. It didn't work.
It didn't work. We tried a parent's workout space because of, according to one individual, all the parents said they would work out if we had the space.
Yeah.
Have we all not heard that? They won't. They don't want to work out in front of people that they might see while their child's doing class. So I look at that space and I think, what is the best use of that space? Is it a new STEM program? I read you the email this morning about somebody reaching out. We've tried art classes in there. We have tried a little bit of everything. That's great space. We have to find a use for it. So I kind of scour the entire gym, and I hear certain coaches who think we've had more kids than we've ever had before, and I pull out the enrollment numbers for the past 15 years, and then we start comparing. So if your people are not mindful of how the space relates to students, and the students relate to dollars, and the dollars relate to profit, and the profit relates to how they're being paid, then all they can see is this extra beam space or extra bar space that could be better utilized for them. I think sharing the concept of best use of space and turn it into a conversation about dollars, I think, is extremely valuable. So we talk internally about those things.
Great stuff. I like to tell people that when I show up on site, I'm looking for the least expensive way to put another group in your gym every hour, like you said. And by the way, the math is 96 plus Saturday. That's you got 96 more kids, 4 days a week, 4 hours a day.
Plus your 4-hour class 2-hour prime time on Saturday. Yeah.
So,
and then make dollars out of those.
All right. The number 4 for you was maximizing space. For me, it was tracking organizational health. And I'm going to blow through this. I'm a data nerd. Jeff's a data nerd. Your son's a data nerd. And I don't know if you're a data nerd, but you are well-versed and very understanding on data. But it can be intimidating for gymnastics coaches because, hey, I'm a gymnastics coach. I don't know how to read a P&L or whatever. But I think that there are a few really key things that can, once you start, can be somebody else can put the numbers in for you once a month, and it'll take them 10 minutes, and it'll take you 10 minutes to read it, and it'll be a good indication to you of whether or not your gym is healthy.
Right.
It's like a physical. You go to the doctor, you get a physical. It won't tell you if you have pancreatic cancer, but it might tell you something's wrong. Let's dig deeper.
Right.
Or it might tell you, looks like everything's good.
Right.
See you next year. So those things are enrollment by department rolling over 24 months. So we have 24 months to compare to, so we can look at month over month, year over year. Gross revenue by department on a rolling 24 month. So again, we can see which departments are doing better and not doing better. And then a thing I call the percentages. And the percentages you only have to look at once a year.
Okay.
And the key percentages are, what is the percentage, what is your non-owner compensation labor as a percentage of your gross revenue?
Okay.
So how much did you pay your employees that aren't you as a percentage of what you took in total? What is your rent as a gross percentage, or as a percentage of your gross revenue? And what is your owner compensation as a percentage of your gross revenue? And we have like some key ranges that we say, if you're in the range in these, this is healthy.
Sure.
But every gym owner gets to decide for themselves. That's the beauty of it. What's healthy? But you just know there's only 100%.
Right.
And so
right.
if you say team is very, very important, I opened a gym to be good at team, so I need a 20,000 square foot building and I only have 600 kids, then your percentage of rent for gross revenue might be like 60%, which means your owner compensation is going to have to be smaller and what you can afford to pay your employees is going to have to be smaller. But you're making that choice. Like, I want this big place, right? And if you can start to shrink one of those, you can make the other ones bigger.
But to understand them first is your jumping off point.
Yes.
And then to have your targets. Where you are may not be where you want to be.
Yes.
And I think that's where a lot of business owners get a little overwhelmed. You can start controlling the controllables to change those numbers.
And none of those numbers that I just gave are difficult ones for even a regular guy like me to understand, right? Every gym owner can look at enrollment by department over the last 24 months and see, oh, this is good because it's going up, or oh, this is bad because it's going down. Or learn what trends are. Oh, we go down in these months, but we're still better than we were this time last year. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
And can do the same thing with gross revenue by department. How much tuition did I collect in the preschool department? How much tuition did I collect in the ninja department? How much money did I collect for birthday parties, camps, so on? And just look at a comparison and know, hey, this is better, this is worse, or this is the same. And then be able to get an indication of whether things are going well or not going well. And if you look at those things every single month, you'll know quickly, like if you did worse this March than you did in February in terms of like enrollment in your preschool department, and you're worse this March than you were last March, you go, there's a problem.
We have a problem.
And you can start figuring out what this problem is. I typically think this way. However long it took me to foul the reputation of ETC Gymnastics or whatever, let's say the Dippers department, it is twice that much time before I can restore it. So if February to March got worse, I have at least 30 days started to foul my reputation, and it's going to take 60 before I can get it back. But because I checked in March what happened in February, by May, I might be able to right the ship. But if I don't look at that stuff, I might go a year before I go, holy crap, things are really going wrong around
Yep.
here. And it's going to take me 2 more years before I can get back to where I was.
I am surprised how frequently I talk with gym club owners who don't do those check-ins. I think because that's the only thing I've known, with at Kids First, and our department leaders are so well versed in. They each get their own department level P&L, and they review that each month. And if they have questions or they're trending down for a significant period of time, they either check in with me or they check in with our real accountant, who would laugh that you referenced me as you did, and she can help give them clarity if nothing else.
Yeah.
But we do check our department revenue, our department profit dollars, our percent. They do a gross profit target. They have a gross profit target, which is essentially their department revenue minus their department labor and any extras that they might need to run their classes, stickers, bubbles, stamps, etc. So they compare those every month. And then we also do enrollment reports by department every month, and they have access to historical data. They can go back 15, 20 years if they would like.
We have all those records, but the report that gets generated is just rolling over 24 months.
Yeah.
And we talked about this morning, that there are some things at ETC that we aren't doing but should be the more we talked this week, because ETC's ready, right? We're big enough. There's enough volume. There's a big enough leadership team. We should be looking at these things. And I think if the average gym club is 500 kids right now, if they want to stay 500, well, then just keep doing what you're doing. You're fine.
Sure.
You obviously made it to 500. Enjoy. But if you're like, hey, I want to get beyond this 500, here's a little tiny thing you can start with. Track your enrollment and your gross revenue by department over a rolling 24 months. And just do that. Look at it every month and look at it and see if you don't, by noticing trends and whatever, see if you don't turn into a 750 kid club, which means you're ready for the next thing, and then get to 1,000 kid, and then you can start talking about having a real accountant doing, departmental P&Ls, which could be intimidating if you're a 500 kid program going, departmental P&L.
Right. And what might those revenue streams be? A preschool, a rec, and a team program.
Yeah.
And so maybe you only need to do one P&L, but do your people understand how you're getting to those numbers at the bottom? Do they understand what things that they can control? I think for us, one of our responsibilities for our department leaders is to maintain the financial health of their department. And if we don't give them the tools to do that, and then the autonomy to make those decisions,
and the accountability,
then we have robbed them of this having a successful program.
Yeah.
I would be very frustrated if that were me.
All right. So my number 4 was tracking organizational health. Your number 5 is employee compensation.
Employee compensation. I was a coach and a department leader for my first 21 years. And my ex-husband and I raised our 3 children. They were able to do gymnastics at Kids First, which is not an inexpensive sport there, on our salaries. And our salaries were, for the industry, we felt competitive, but for raising a family, it was hard.
Sure.
And I'm very mindful of that. My 3 adult children are full-time employees at Kids First. I know what their salaries are. I know what their mortgages are. And I am mindful of the youngest department leader who's a full-time salary to our most veteran. And for me, my goal is to always be competitive, to an extent, take the dollars off the table, so that when they have to work those shifts and have that sometimes emotional baggage that comes with this industry, that they feel like they're well compensated. And it is a constant struggle, because the profit margins for us in our, when you see Kids First and 108,000 square feet, our overhead is a little different than the typical gym.
Sure.
So we're constantly trying to get creative with how else do we compensate our people. We have a board of advisors. Every department leader, when they're hired, is on our board of advisors. It's a group of about 18 people right now, and it's formulaic. Every quarter, they share in the previous year profits. And everybody has, as long as they're full-time, they all have an equal share in those previous year profits. And the owners are very generous with those dollars. We also have a formula for our full-time employees that we want to keep. And they also have they're eligible for quarterly bonuses. It doesn't mean every full-time employee receives a quarterly bonus. It means those who are those star employees that you just don't want to have to replace. We're all replaceable, but some are more difficult to replace than others.
Yeah.
So, and our starting wages, you said McDonald's $15 an hour. We have an amusement park, an outdoor amusement park. They started 2 or 3 years ago. They raised their starting rate to $18 an hour.
Oh my goodness.
So to be competitive with that, what we try to do, in addition to be competitive in our compensation, is have generous benefits and be a really great place to work, where we're the standard of those young people's employment as they move elsewhere. I mentioned with our department leaders, they do have flexible vacation. So they're able to take off when they need to take off, as much as they need to take off, as long as they hit these checkpoints of accountability. So compensation is probably on the front of my mind as much as tuition adjustments are. Those are the two things that really dig at me and my core. Really, I want to be able to pay these people what their true value is, and I know that some gyms pay differently. They have a different model that they're working under.
Yeah, it's hard. Okay, it's on the one hand we say, hey, we want to pay these people what they're worth, and you, on the one hand, you met Dean yesterday, one of our greatest employees. And when we lured him in, he was an executive for Verizon.
Oh.
We couldn't afford to pay him. At that point, I think we only had 600 or 700 kids at ETC Gymnastics, one location. But he had a heart attack, a really bad heart attack that was stress-induced from his work.
Wow.
And so he came and worked for us essentially for pittance compared to what he was making, because there's a difference between what you're worth on the open market and what you're worth in our industry.
Very different.
And by the way, gym owners, when you're charging the right amount of tuition, when you don't have guilt about that, you can afford to pay your people,
right,
and attract them. And I have my chief of operations was a manager of logistics for Walmart Corporation. And he makes a really, really good living. I'll talk to you off air about how much he makes a year at ETC. And we're only able to do that because of the sort of business successes which start at charging what you're worth.
Right.
At ETC. So for us, employee compensation revolves around 3 sort of key things: time served versus value added. So instead of you've been here a year, we're going to give you a raise. When you add value to the company, we add value to their paycheck. Sure. Profit sharing, which is, hey, let's create a bonus structure for your sort of good performance here.
Yep.
And then what we sort of call ownership. And I'm the only one that owns ETC Gymnastics. But when you create a new revenue stream at ETC Gymnastics that did not exist before you, I'm willing to grant you some of the money for doing that. And it's always a win-win. And I'm giving some lectures at Congress about this year. So come see me. I don't remember which. Stay tuned for future episodes, and I'll tell you which Congresses are getting which lectures. All right. So number 5 for me was not having an exit strategy. I see all the time these gym owners that are in their late 60s or 70s and haven't planned for their retirement. They thought they'd sell their business, but the reality is they've got a 400 or 500 kid gymnastics club, which is not saleable to the open public. You can find, some gym owners maybe, or somebody within your program maybe to buy it, but it's not there, or they didn't buy any real estate. Here's the things that I try to help them prepare. First of all, what you have to do is you have to start preparing in the beginning. Think about, what is my exit strategy? When do I want it? When do I want to be able to exit? And you can always revise that, because who the heck really knows what they want when they're 25 years old what I'm going to want when I'm 65 or whatever, right?
Right. That's
But
exactly right.
start the plan, and then if you have to make adjustments along the way, make adjustments. But here's some easy ways to do this. Set up systems so that you can eventually run your gym remotely so that you don't have to be involved in the day-to-day operations. In this way, you can retire whenever the heck you want.
Sure.
You could be 40 and sort of be retired because you aren't running the day-to-day and just collecting a paycheck for starting the business. By the way, set up a gym like that and it makes it much more saleable to non-gymnastics people, to
Right.
these private equity firms, because that's what they're looking for.
Right.
Businesses that will make them money that they don't have to be involved in on the day-to-day,
Right.
right? You can do in-house financing. So identify somebody let's say when you're 10 years out, you go, I wanted to be retired when I'm 60. So you're 50 and you start looking around at somebody who's in leadership at your gym and is really valuable and you don't want to lose them.
Right.
And so you pull them in the office and say, here's what I'd like to do. 5 years from now, I'd like to put you on a plan, a 5-year plan to buy me out. And what I will do is in 5 years, we'll look at what the company is worth and I will agree to sell it to you at that price. And you will have control over the next 5 years. And if the gym increases in value, it doesn't matter. The price doesn't go up. The price doesn't go down. And I'll do in-house financing. Like you'll just pay me this much a month for this many years to do that.
Absolutely.
And the third way to do it is just build up a very big, very profitable gym that you can sell on the open market to whoever you want. But there has to be a plan. The real estate plan is valuable too. Buy the building and have the company rent the building from you at fair market value rent. Oh my gosh. I cannot tell you how many times I see gym owners, but the gym buys the building and so the gym's paying the mortgage. Well, you're in trouble because, or they buy the building and they charge the gym $500 a month rent more than the mortgage is.
Yeah.
When somebody comes in to evaluate your business, they go, well, that's not fair market value rent. I have to look at this through fair market value lens. And let's say you should have been collecting an extra $100,000 a year in rent.
Right.
Because that's, on a 20,000 square foot, we built a 12,500 square foot building. You saw it. It's very nice. It's upscale.
Yep.
But it was $4 million start to finish to do that thing. And the mortgage is like $23,000. That's the mortgage. So if I was going to charge fair market value rent on that, I could easily on that space be getting well upwards of $30,000. And so we have to charge that.
Right.
So only $8,300 a month is $100,000 a year. So a $23,000 mortgage, or like if I was charging $23,000 rent, that's probably a $15,000 mortgage, right? And that I'm losing out on $100,000 a year that I should be collecting in rent. And that comes right off the top of what your business is worth. And depending on who's valuating your business, it's between a 3X and a 5X loss. So if you lose $100,000 a year, that could be $500,000 off the value of your business off the top. So if you thought you had a $2 million business, now you have a $1.5 million business. And the government's going to get 40% of that when you sell it. So start a strategy when you're young.
Right.
On your exit strategy and make adjustments along the way. That's all fine.
Just start.
But have one. Have one.
Yeah. Good.
All right.
That's great advice.
Jennifer, I'm going to pay you another compliment. You're a brilliant businesswoman. It's why the first time I ever heard you speak, I said, man, I got to get this woman on the show. And you have no formal business education, and neither do I. So where do you think all this business acumen came from for you? Where did you get that?
That's a great question. I'm sure it will be a big shock at what I say, that the majority of it likely has come from Jeff and what I have learned. I have sat in 2 boot camps twice a year since I've been at Kids First in I guess my first full year would have been 1999. So that's a lot of strategy and introduction to business and planning and leadership. But funny story, before I left Oregon, I had written a business plan. I think Jeff stole my business plan. It was for Kids World, and it was I'm sure nothing as magnificent as Kids First, but in my mind it was. And I had written it up from beginning to end. I wanted to go to the SBA and get a loan, and it didn't happen. But I think I always knew that I just wanted to have some autonomy and be able to create and drive something myself, which is why when I went to Kids First, I stayed at Kids First. There was not micromanaging. It was, this is yours to create and do with as you choose, as long as you meet these targets. And I think over time,
Hence the authority and the accountability.
the authority and the accountability. And that autonomy plays a huge role. I think I said responsibility early. It's the autonomy that you are running this business inside of a business, is how we often reference that internally. And that's where my experience came from, just learning and doing, and then somebody having the wisdom to share the numbers behind it so I could see how it was working. If I was just going in and arbitrarily working for trying to get to a number of athletes or a number of students in Tumblebees and didn't really understand the numbers behind those, how do I have a goal? How do I pivot when I'm not hitting something that I don't know exists? So I think the business mindset came from, Jeff kind of pouring into me.
So you had a 20-year boot camp.
I had a 20-year
And speaking of boot camp, here we go.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell my audience about what boot camp is? And I'm going to give it a ringing endorsement because I've paid 2 different times, once for me to be there and once for one of my key people to be there, because it really is fantastic and made a lasting impact that it won't make an impact if you don't follow through.
Right.
But that's on the purchaser to do.
Yeah.
But tell us about it. Tell us about what boot camp is.
Well, exactly 2 weeks from today, we'll be totally immersed in the full day 1 of boot camp. And boot camp is about a 4-day immersion business opportunity for people in this industry. It's very heavy on strategic planning. Jeff is very open with things that have worked and not worked over his 50 years of business. And it's everything from creating a culture and sustaining and maintaining and perpetuating that culture and why it's so important to an organization. We spend all day Saturday talking about hiring and employment and development of your staffing. We talk about marketing, external, internal marketing, office procedures. We're actually spending a little bit of time. Jeff is working on a couple of new presentations. Just, are we in a recession and what do we do? And he has lived through multiple recessions over his lifetime. So just trying to take the current events of today, but also that deep-rooted strategy that has worked and is timeless. And he will put his stamp on his guarantee that it will be the best education far beyond your formal education that you may have when it comes to terms of your business. It's lifetime solutions for your business and business solutions for lifetime.
What about does this cost?
Oh, gosh. It's an all-inclusive, so we take care of all the hotel and meals. I am not the administrator. I'm going to say $2,500.
Okay. And it's a 4-day experience that includes room and board.
And meals. It also includes all transportation from the airport to the hotel and back and forth to Kids First.
Nice.
And he's been doing it for 34 years. He started his first one in 1991.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I want to say I attended mine in, I want to say 06, 07, somewhere around there, right when you must have
That would have been my
first got there.
transition.
And sent my guy there maybe around 09.
Okay. Awesome.
Well worth the money.
Our next one will be in November, and I think the tentative dates are November 13th through 17th.
I got, November 13th through 17th.
Okay.
And in 2 weeks, you got that one coming up in May. And something else exciting you guys have coming up in August. You guys invented this thing called Ninja Connect. Why don't you tell us about that?
So my son runs our Ninja program. We peak somewhere around, we're pushing 500 students. We haven't hit that yet. We started in July of 2020, and he has totally immersed himself into the whole world of Ninja, and his goal is to share information and connect with industry leaders to grow the sport. And on top of that, what he would like to do is share the important how and why and where it could go in your own program. We've kind of navigated that on our own and created something out of nothing. That is the largest revenue stream that has been instituted at Kids First since since our inception, I believe, other than summer camp. Summer camp was a big one. So that happens August 22nd and 23rd. It's a 2-day event, but we do have a 3rd day free add-on with World Ninja Sport, and that is a partnership with Justin Conway, who does level 1 certification. He'll offer level 1 certification on Sunday, which has about a $1,500 value.
Wow.
When we first started Ninja, we ran 3 employees, including Reese, through Justin Conway's. It's called the Spotted program, I think, and it helped us with insurance.
And what
to be
does
perfectly honest.
the Ninja Connect cost
That
roughly?
Oh, I should know that. I think it's roughly $300 for a 3-day for the 2 days plus the 3rd day add-on, and it will include some of the meals.
Okay. But attendees would be responsible for their own
Hotel.
transportation and their own hotel.
If they flew in, we would help pick them up from the airport.
I'm going to I have 2 like on the org chart Ninja people that
Awesome.
I'm going to be sending to this
All right,
thing.
well, shoot me an email.
Okay.
It's going to be great, and I will tell you, you will, both at boot camp and Ninja Connect, it is money well spent. It is not intended to give you 2 or 3 or 4 new students. The whole idea is to completely change the direction of your organization.
Listen, I've sat in on enough of Jeff's lectures, enough of your lectures, and boot camp that your brand has earned my trust. That if you were selling me a $2,500 product, and you have a couple of times, I know I'm going to leave there with much more than $2,500 worth of value. And if Ninja Connect is $300, then
I think it is.
I know I'm going to get more than that in value. So that's great. As we start to wrap up, let me ask you some very generic gymnastics questions. In 3 minutes or less, how did gymnastics shape your life?
Completely. I mean, gymnastics, I think I am the result of a non-superstar. We see the college athletes and the Olympic athletes on TV, and everybody aspires to be that. And what we forget about are those daily kids that are going in and putting in the 12, 16, 20 hours a week, giving up the things that they give up so that they can do the sport. And what we hope is that the kids come out of the sport with a work ethic or a work intensity, self-discipline, empowerment, courage, the ability to pivot and think. And it has shaped my character for sure. I mean, I think I know I didn't go to college, and sometimes there's a little bit of, I wish I had a degree, but I was a gymnast. And that, to me, feels like that fills in all of the gaps of what I might be lacking elsewhere.
Yes, I agree. Gymnastics shaped my life the same way. And I did go to college, and we already talked about how much that does or doesn't mean. But what I tell people, because I was a political science pre-law major that did not finish law school.
Wow.
And what did I get out of that makes me a better gymnastics coach? Well, about half of what I learned at college that was valuable to me had nothing to do with the classroom, right?
Sure.
And I think gymnastics is a lot that way. About half of what you learn doing gymnastics applies to the rest of your life and has nothing to do with gymnastics.
I 100% agree.
You being able to do a cartwheel right now at your age, and I won't say what it is, does not affect your life at all. But the lessons you learned in terms of short-term sacrifice for long-term gain,
absolutely,
hard work, that the reality is the only person that you're working against, if you will, is you, right? Because nobody plays defense in gymnastics.
Right.
Nobody can get up on the beam and throw you off while you're in the middle of a routine.
Right.
You constantly have to strive to improve you and you alone. And that's the only thing you can control. And sometimes the hard lesson of that is, even though you did all of the hard work and you did it exactly the way you were supposed to, there's people that are better.
There's people that are better.
That's life.
That is life. And that is another reason I love the sport.
Yeah.
It's very humbling.
All right. Since this podcast's inception, I've had many guests that were extensively involved in the elite world, whether they were competitors or coaches or some of them both. And I always like to ask them this question. If your daughter wanted to do elite gymnastics, would you allow her So again, this is assuming that she is the driving force behind it, and knowing what you know, because you're a gymnastics insider, would you allow her to do elite gymnastics?
It would have depended on where she was doing it. And I would never have sent her off somewhere. So if there was somewhere that I had faith in the ability to empower her as a young woman and prepare her for life when she's hung up her grips, if she was the driver, yes.
Okay.
If it came at the cost of her emotional or physical health, no.
Okay. Good answer. Good answer. I think most reasonable parents would say the same thing. I think there's even unreasonable parents that say that but don't practice it. So I would have liked to ask you, would you allow your daughters to pursue a career in gymnastics? But obviously your daughters and your son are all pursuing a gymnastics career. So let me rephrase it
Oh boy.
and say, would you allow and allow is too strong because they're adults. They get to do what
Sure.
they want. Would you be very confident and comfortable if your children wanted to pursue a career in gymnastics outside of Kids First?
My first reaction would be I wouldn't share with them, as I'd be very sad about that because I'm selfish as a mother and the president of the company. My kids are
I meant this from a
fantastic
perspective of like, okay, Kids First doesn't exist.
If Kids First doesn't exist, if it makes them happy and brings them joy, yes, it is a very hard industry
It
to
is.
choose.
Yep.
And they know that, and they also know how I feel about that for them. I think the balance is they're young, 24 and 25. The social life, when you work until 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night and all day Saturdays for a young person, it's hard to manage.
Well, I would argue even the family life is hard when you get older and you're doing
Yes.
that, unless the
You
person that
can't
you're
get there
married,
without the social life, but
right?
yes.
Unless the person you're married to is also in the industry.
That's exactly right.
Because in my case, if my wife had a 9-to-5 job and I wasn't getting home till 9 o'clock at night, and often later than that, so it was very common for us to have dinner at 9:45.
Oh,
that's why we
right.
homeschooled the kids and whatever.
Right.
How can my audience get connected to things like Boot Camp, Kids First, or Ninja Connect? If they
All
need
of
some
those,
information?
they can go to kidsfirstsports.com and find their way. But Boot Camp is metzgerbootcamp.com. And Ninja Connect, I believe, is kidsfirstsports /ninja-connect.
Okay.
But they can also just email me.
So if they,
would
okay,
like.
well, what's your email
My
address?
email is jevans@kidsfirstsports.com.
And Evans, EVANS.
EVANS, yes.
Okay. At Kids First
Sports at kidsfirstsports.com.
And the website, one more time, is
kidsfirstsports.com.
Okay, great. It's been great to get to know you over these last few weeks, all our Zoom calls and texts and whatever. You're a remarkable woman. I admire a great deal. Can't wait to see you at Congress. Before you go, I want to ask you my usual time machine questions. Okay. Same ones I ask everybody. So the first one is, if you could go back in time and undo any one decision that you've made, which decision would you undo?
That's a loaded question.
It is. That's why I asked
And there are
it.
some personal things that would be included in there, but I won't share.
Well, it doesn't have to be a gymnastics thing.
Something that I would undo, I probably would have stayed in my Oregon job a little longer and not gone to Washington. I feel like I could have benefited more from a little time where I was, but I don't know that it would have brought me to Ohio. So
yeah, you were on a path.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting that you say that, because when I had Milan Stanovich on here, I asked him the same question.
Mm-hmm.
And what he said was, I wouldn't undo anything because my path has led me to where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love and cherish where I am today. So
it's funny. My husband and I talk about that often. You know, if he would have done one or two or three things differently, or I would have, our paths would not have crossed.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm right where I should be because of the decisions that I made.
All right. So if you could go back in time then and offer young Jennifer one piece of advice, one piece, what would it be?
Your value is not in how other people view you. Your value is on what you give and what you create and the relationships that you have.
Wow. Deep. Wow. You went there. All right.
I did.
I always ask my guests for a book recommendation. Do you have one for us?
I do. I have two. One is Atomic Habits.
What's
I
with
think
you
that's
Cincinnati
it's a
people?
popular one.
And Mary Lee recommended that one too.
It is a very,
Must
very
be
good
very
read.
popular in Cincinnati. I read it after she recommended it.
I loved it.
I
think
love
it's
it.
a
It's
great.
an excellent
It
book.
resonated with me. The other is Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. I think he is.
What is that one again?
Unreasonable Hospitality.
Okay.
It's the idea that there's more to customer service. It is, and we're in a service industry.
Yep.
It's about how people feel with your experience, and it is based on the premise of this man owns 11 Madison Park restaurant, and he became the #1 restaurant in the world, and how he did that and what he did, and it was all about the experience that he provides his people.
When we get off the air, text me that.
I will.
I'm gonna.
That is
that book immediately.
for anybody in a service industry. It is a must read.
One of the things I liked having read Atomic Habits is you and I have talked a lot this week about eating an elephant one bite at a time.
Yes.
And I think Atomic Habits helps you with that. And it even teaches you how to take a very small bite first. So
I agree.
Good book, easy read.
Yep.
My book recommendation this month is a book called The Silence of Adam. And primarily this book is for the men. And the premise of the book is in the Bible, the story is that Eve took the apple and she's the cause of the fall of man.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one line in the story, in the Bible story, that discloses that Adam was standing right behind her the whole time. And that the fall of man is caused not by Eve, but by Adam's silence. Mm. And I think this book is actually fantastic, not just for Christian men, but I think this is a book that outlines what healthy masculinity looks like and is designed for, and is good in your relationship or just for you as a man to understand, like, hey, what we are actually called to speak up at times. And there's a difference between speaking up and controlling and whatever.
Sure.
But healthy masculinity.
Yeah.
Jennifer, it's been an absolute privilege to have you on the show today. Good luck to you in your business, because you are a partner over there at Kids First. Proud of you. Way to go. Which congresses will you be speaking at this year?
I am at Region 5 and National Congress.
Region 5 and National. I'll be at Region 5, 6, 7, and National, which is down in New Orleans. When we're there, we should get dinner together.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure either my wife will be there with me or my daughter, one of those two. And
my son will be.
We'll go somewhere nice and have a good dinner. If anyone in my audience wants more information about the many ways Iron Business Solutions can help you reach your vision for your gym, visit us on the web or social media. Links in the description. And if you enjoy this podcast, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. And as usual, people, until the next episode of Stick the Landing Podcast, brought to you by Iron Business Solutions, I'm Ken Harris with Iron Business Solutions, and we'll have stories to tell and solutions to deliver for your gymnastics business. Hey, if you enjoy this podcast, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media and leave us a review. Links in the description.